Good evening. The recorder is now being turned on. So if you want to say something to me, this is the time. So I've got evidence, and I've got the police here. Good evening. It is 5 o'clock. I do welcome everybody to the meeting. Due to the fact that we do have a member of the public, with the evacuation procedure, the fire drill is not expected. So if the alarm sounds, please evacuate the building quickly and calmly. Please use these stairs, do not use the lifts. Once out of the building, please gather outside the Yorkshire Bank on the opposite side of the road. Exit by the door which you entered the room or by the fire exit which are clearly indicated by the stone and green fire exit signs. If you need any assistance in evacuating the building, please make yourself known to a member of the staff. Please also make sure all your mobile phones are turned off to set silent. At that point, I'm going to say I will be leaving mine on because my daughter's been rushed to hospital today with kidney issues on emergency things. So I'm leaving just in case I get a phone call, so please excuse me, that is the reason I'm leaving it on. Thank you. The Chair to advise the meeting of all parts of the meeting will be recorded for future broadcast. Obviously, the electricity has been turned on. Okay, apologies. Do you have any? We've not received any apologies. Minutes to be confirmed, the last meeting. I didn't do it, but...
9 amendments, page 7.
I've got the minutes.
On minutes.
There it is. Minutes, number 3.
Minutes. So an amendment on page 7 where it says closure of children's centres. We did actually discuss the terminology of that we would discuss the entire changes, not just closures of children's centres. So that is incorrect. Where it says closures, it should be changes, not closures.
You okay with that? Yeah. Okay, everybody happy with the change, and otherwise the minutes are acceptable?
Not closing any children's centres then?
Well, there's a whole programme of works, it's changes, not just closures, isn't it? So we're looking at the whole project.
We'll see. We've changed the change now.
I thought it was a closure.
Actually, can I just clarify it? There won't be any children's centres at all after the changes. The centres that are left open will be called family hubs. They won't be children's centres as we know it that are 0 to 5 services.
Can I just say, please, that we are now challenging the minutes rather than what's being debated about it. If you need the minutes changing, that's what it's about, or it's not printed correctly, that is what we're doing and not debating an issue.
I propose the minutes stay the same, Chairman.
Second.
Okay. You okay with that?
Hang on.
Okay, we've got that. Sorry, yes.
Sorry, Chair, my recollection is also that the agreement by the Chair, Councillor Golby, at the last meeting was that this item would be included on the basis that we looked at the whole changes that were being made. And that was what was agreed at that meeting. I wouldn't want to change what actually happened, and we can review the video evidence if it's needed. But that's what members agreed at the time.
Councillor?
I totally agree with the Councillor Tromans there in the fact that it was going to be looked at in the future. However, the topic was the closure of children's centres.
Chair, should we review?
Well, wait, okay, I'm with you, but I'm trying to now get guidance. You're the ones going.
That what both people have said is correct. The item on the agenda for
So we're going to change that
consideration
minute, are we?
was for the work programme to include closure of the children's centre.
Yeah.
As an additional element, Councillor Golby did say that she would like the whole thing to be looked at rather than just closure.
So we need that to be added to the minutes.
So
Can I just say then, we'll give me authority to, once they're included and whatever, and put right, you'll give me the permission to sign the document.
Yes.
I can assure you we'll do it, we'll do whatever. Okay.
Well, you can sign the document, Chair, with the amendment.
Okay. You say so.
On the next, I'll say it in the minutes
Well,
that
that's
it
it, you've got
includes
it.
an amendment.
Is that the part of it as well?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, thanks very much for that. Declaration of interest, got any, yes,
Uh,
oh, that one, sorry, you're okay.
there is, Deputy Police and Crime Commissioner for Warwickshire.
Okay. Anybody else? Yes,
That I sit under the Nuneaton and Bedworth Safe Communities Partnership, and I'm also a member of the Residents Partnership.
okay, you got that, look, acceptable? Okay. Where are we now? Moving over. So, oh yes, go on to the meeting. The treasury which no inspection.
Chair, I ought to declare that I am a member of the the Children's Advisory Board for Nuneaton.
And Chair, I'm also on the advisory board for Stockingford in my role as Chair of Governors for Stockingford Children's Centre.
Okay, thanks very much. Right, anybody else okay, all clear now? Okay, thank you. Public consultation, we do have a lady with us, a speaker, and the lady's name is
Jess Tomlinson. Jess
Jess Thompson. I'll be with that. The issue, I understand, well, the bit there, you wanted to speak on item 6. I'm sure the gentleman is going to be late,
Yeah.
but because you want to make comments with regard to that, and you have to go before the reasons you've given, I will let you speak. If you wish to speak now, you can,
Yes, please.
and then the committee can take note of what you're doing and what you've said, and when that item come up, if we need to refer to it, we will do so, okay?
Yes, that's
So if you like to come forward, or you can sit there, you're welcome.
Come on. Got it on my phone, sorry.
Uh,
Tonight you're going to hear from Priority Families about the proposals to redesign services for children aged 0 to 5. You will hear how this redesign will streamline services, making them more accessible to everyone rather than just a few, and how these changes will mean a brighter future for our children. I'm here tonight to ask you to please see past the selling pitch. I'm asking you to think about what will happen if volunteers just don't step forwards to run the remaining centres, and what will happen if people are then expected to pay for the services they once accessed for free, despite many families not having enough money to put food on the table, never mind get on a bus. The level of skill the children's centre staff have is immeasurable. How much will it cost to train new staff, and will they be as capable of spotting possible safeguarding issues as the current staff? How much money has been spent so far during the consultation process? Is it not wasting money in order to save money? These proposals actually risk costing a lot more later down the line, when parents that can't access the same level of support as they do now end up suffering more with mental health issues, unemployment and many more issues that could have been prevented with the help from children's centres. We also stand to lose a generation of children with health and learning issues due to a lack of easy access to early intervention and the professional services offered at children's centres. These children risk not being picked up until school years, which then would require more expensive and costly intervention. Thank you.
Thank you. If you can, with a report like that, obviously it's very important the comments that you've made. Obviously the committee will take back and want to do, I'll write it down, whatever, because some of the points you make, I think that they do need to get it across to the, so if you can wait on a little while, we're hoping they can make it, and then
I'm going to
I'll let
wait
you have
until I
another
get a
stab.
text saying my sitter has got to go.
But if they come then, I'll let you have another stab at it just there, because some of the points you've made I think they need to listen to very carefully. I know the committee have done that, but they will refer to it if necessary, so thank you on that one. Right, now so as I say, the children closure is going to be a little bit later. I'm not sure, he hasn't told us when he's doing, but he did it on the way, hopefully. And we should, if not, then we'll have to do whatever. 6? Oh, my record would be over by that thought. And now I'd like to welcome Police Commissioner Phil to do Nuneaton. He's not. He's been before. He knows where we are and what we're doing. So there's not a written report as such in there, but it's verbal there. So welcome to the committee. Welcome to the meeting. And we're in your hands.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good evening, everybody. I've actually been in Nuneaton all day. We had, in this very room, we had the police and crime panel this morning. So, delighted to be here, and I've had a good...
One of the finest places to come.
indeed. I've had a good day in Nuneaton. I haven't got a written report, as you said. I'm just happy to flag up a few things that I think are relevant, and some of the things we are talking about and deciding and thinking on at the moment. I'm very happy to take questions at the end. If they are operational, I shall ask them to my left to I'm not operational, but if there's anything strategic or about finance or anything else, I'm very happy to answer those. So hopefully between us we can answer questions. So I've been in this position about a year now, and from what I see, I think we enjoy a good relationship with the Nuneaton and Bedworth Community Safety Partnership, and I think there's a good partnership approach with open communication and analysis of key community safety issues here in Nuneaton and Bedworth. My office funds us quite a lot of projects in Nuneaton and Bedworth from the grant fund. Some of that goes to the CSP to support their action plan and to third sector and voluntary organisations. A couple of examples: we fund the Nuneaton Taxi Marshal Scheme, and we contribute towards some of the CCTV here in Nuneaton, which is extremely, and Bedworth, which is extremely important. Last year, we funded some work via the CSB to improve Meadow Court Pool Bank recreation area, where there was and probably still is a significant drug dealing problem, and that was the location where Morgan Hare was murdered. And I know that you're aware that I have been corresponding, and I've had meetings, I've been on the TV with Colin Hare, Morgan Hare's father, and we are looking in to see if we can stop that situation happening again, where an offender came out of prison and within 3 months he murdered Colin's son. And that is not right, it's not acceptable. So we're gathering evidence and working locally to start with, and I intend to take that nationally to see if we can stop that happening again to any other families. These are in random order, by the way. Next Tuesday, we've got a very important event at Dunchurch in Rugby, which is a whole day where we are launching the Vulnerability and Serious Organised Crime Awareness event. I've noticed since I came in that a lot of the vulnerable people right across Warwickshire are very much susceptible to serious organised crime, becoming victims of that. And I think there hasn't been much putting those two things together. So we're going to be doing and launching that next week. It's been developed by the Serious and Organised Crime Joint Action Group, and we want to strengthen those links between serious and organised crime and the impact on the most vulnerable members of our communities. Quite a lot of partners have expressed concerns to me that they find it difficult to inform and engage with the vulnerability agenda, and I think this is a launch to try and break down that particular barrier. And I know, I think you might be coming, Rachel. There's somebody coming from each part of the county. We've got about 130, which is as many as we can have, of which half are officers. And it's about and a lot of partners like fire, like social services, who are those who go into people's houses and learn to spot vulnerability. And if we can try and do that, maybe we can stop them becoming victims. So I think it's an excellent agenda to be launching. Particularly opposite at the moment is how we're approaching unauthorised encampments of gypsies and travellers. I'm pleased to report that the Camp Hill, I'm sure Duff will confirm this, the site has now been vacated in pretty quick order. These unauthorised encampments are a huge challenge to both the Borough Council here, the police and other agencies who get involved. It's costing your ratepayers a lot of money. It is causing considerable concern, and I get a lot of post and mail about unauthorised encampments. So we produced this protocol. It's to be signed by what it is. I don't think Nuneaton and Bedworth have signed it yet, but I'd be grateful if you could. Warwick have, and the police have, but it's all the agencies involved, and it's about setting out the process, everybody understanding what is possible and understanding expectations. And one of the big parts in it is all of you here have a part to play, I think it is right that residents should know what's happening. They should be reported back to, and I think local councillors have a not a duty, but I think they have a moral steer to report back to your residents. I had one when I was district councillor in my patch, and the residents were really pleased to hear what was going on. A lot easier now with social media as to what's happening, and I think that will reduce some of the concerns that residents have about these encampments. But next week is the Kenilworth Horse Fair, so there's plenty around at the moment, and the police are extremely busy, as are all the local authorities. And the operational working group is going to continue for the time being till we get the protocol embedded. My office will be chairing that. A little bit of good news for the police. You'll probably be aware that the old former police headquarters at Leek Wootton has been earmarked for disposal once the control centre moves into Warwick. And we've just heard that the Warwick District Council local plan core strategy has been found sound by the inspector, which takes our site out of the green belt and is allocating about 115 houses for the site. So that is really good news for the police. It will restock some of our capital balances, which have been reducing due to the amount of equipment and buildings and all the other expenditure on capital. So that will be good news for our residents, I believe. Members of Parliament I meet with regularly. I have regular meetings with Marcus Jones, and he has a very similar postback that I have about crime, about the police in this part of the world. And I'm working with him. He's obviously a government minister, and he has opened one or two doors for me to be able to go and talk to the policing minister. I've met the Home Secretary a couple of times and talked about policing and crime in Warwickshire. So Marcus has been a great assistance, as indeed have the other members of Parliament in Warwickshire. And they all, I'm trying to go to some of the surgeries with them so I can listen firsthand, and I'm trying to promote with them and through them nationally some of the challenges and problems we have here in Warwickshire. Rob has already declared he has been appointed as my Deputy Police and Crime Commissioner, and just so you're aware, he will be heading up our office work, dealing with the Health and Wellbeing Board, Warwickshire Youth Justice Service, and grant decisions that we make involving joint decisions with Warwickshire County Council. So that I think will be good news for me, and plainly you'll be able to help me with my main challenge and duty, which is to engage with the residents. So that will become double, right, what it has been over the last year. Another charter, and something I promised before I got elected, was to create to form and launch a victims charter. That's now been done on the 3rd of November in Warwick. We've got Baroness Newlove, who is the Victims Commissioner, coming from London to help us do that. And that will set out my police crime plan priority, putting victims and survivors first. That agenda is so important to our residents. We fund through the Ministry of Justice the victim support here in Warwickshire. They get a lot of money off us, and we've been holding them to account and pushing them to do more to help all the victims that go to them once they have sadly become a victim of a crime. One national matter, all PCCs have to do something. I've been put in charge of the emergency service collaboration, which is about police, fire, ambulance, Coast Guard, local government, working closer together to collaborate, to improve operationally the service all those give to our residents. And a lot of people have been asking me what's happening locally. The Police and Crime Act, which came law in January, enabled police and crime commissioners to take over the governance of their local fire service, subject to agreement locally. So I've done quite a bit of consulting, talking, listening to people, and I've decided that we're not going to change the governance arrangements here in Warwickshire for the time being, and that will be continued to be governed as part of the county council as it is at the moment. But I am going to establish, we're in the process of doing it, a similar board locally to reflect what we've got nationally. So I want to see police, fire, ambulance, health service, local government on a board to look at ways we can collaborate to give a better response, experience and service to our residents. So that will be up and running. It's been passed by the Cabinet and County Council, and that will now go forward to its first meeting. And Rob Jones will be chairing that committee. 3 or 4 things that are of interest, I hope, to your members, and I'm happy to answer questions. The recent announcement in Parliament about the lifting of the pay cap. We've calculated that will cost us about 500,000 this year, which equates to, if you want to put it in officer terms, about 10 police officers. I hope it won't get to that. One of my priorities is to put as much money and effort and resource into the frontline policing as opposed to what is called the back office. So I hope it, but that's what it would equate to if anybody is interested. And just a couple of messages if I can get across to you all to spread out, I think, on behalf of crime prevention and protection of our residents in Warwickshire. Firstly is to get everybody to report a crime. A lot of people I speak to say, well, I was a victim the other day of something was stolen or it was a hate crime or something like that. I didn't bother to report it because the police wouldn't do anything about it. That is not true. If we don't have the information, and I'm sure Daph would bear this out, as to where crimes are being carried out, we don't know where to put the resources to try and prevent or indeed apprehend offenders of those crimes. So please always report crime. And secondly, in villages, and I'm sure it's the same in the town, people talk to me about speeding, and people talk to me about robbery and burglary, etc. going on. So I would urge you to promote in your own wards, if you can, if you haven't already got them. I know there are some good organisations here. A speed watch operation, we help fund some of the setting up of it. It does reduce speed, which is the point of this, and it does contribute to our road safety initiative. And neighbourhood watch, and I know you've got a very good neighbourhood watch in Nuneaton, but I don't think not everywhere has one, so I would also encourage that.
Don't forget Bedworth and Borkington.
Bedworth has one as well, we've met them many times. And I'm always supportive of Neighbourhood Watch. They are a great assistance to the operational, to the police, to our SNTs who they engage with. I hope that the SNTs report back to you regularly and tell you what's going on, and indeed some of the successes they have, and they have had some good successes recently. So that's important. So that's the sort of wide canter through, Mr. Chairman, of current things on the books. I haven't given a formal presentation. Most I think we've run the table have heard that already, but I would be happy to take questions.
Thank you very much. John?
Thanks, Chair. Thanks for going, Mr. Seacombe. There's I've got 3 points. I'm trying to keep them as strategic as possible rather than operational, because we see from the figures that we've got in front of us and what's been in front of us before, is that crime is actually starting to go up in Warwickshire, and that is a big concern. There's the point that you made earlier on about closed circuit television, that you contribute to closed circuit television. I actually thought it was only the Borough Council that contributed to the CCCT. I don't think the police have contributed anything. In fact, as we know, there's no members of the business community either, so it's just the Borough Council, I think. So on the trying to keep, that's the first question, trying to keep it strategic. You were saying gypsies and travellers. Now, we had a debate not so long ago there about gypsies and travellers and what we can and what we can't do. And it was said at that meeting that Nuneaton and Bedworth could be used as a template in order to, because of the good practice that we have within the borough. But some of us always have and will argue that there's some more points more powers have got to be given to the police and local authorities through central government. And I think that the Prime Minister yesterday poo-pooed this idea to say that the police and local authorities had enough power. So I have a great concern there that we're going to be round and round in circles for a long time. And lastly, if I can, Chair, You're saying that the cuts that have just been suggested, the 1.5%, although we all welcome the police and other services getting the extra money, it equates to a £500,000 cut in your budget, which has already been cut time after time after time. So where is the 500,000 going to be found from? As I said, I've tried to keep it as strategic as possible, rather than trying to get into the nitty-gritty.
Thank you. Yep, crime is increasing. I don't think one can argue against that. I think some of the figures are inflated by us asking, and indeed residents responding to reporting more crime. So there is quite a lot of crime that has gone on that we didn't know about, which is now being reported, which is actually a good thing. It isn't necessarily a bad thing that the crime figures have gone up, but if crime has gone up, that is a bad thing, and that has an effect on our communities. So the two parts to the plan are about prevention of crime, protection of individuals and communities, and we are doing everything we can. I'm afraid I can't stop the crimes being committed, but I can try and ensure that the force respond appropriately and proportionately to those crimes, and that all the agencies involved in prevention and protection are doing their bit and their part of it. This is a partnership business. The MASH, you've probably heard of, which is the Multi-Agency Safeguarding Hub, has produced an enormous amount of extra work for both social services and the police force. And that is a good thing. I think people are now being, they are empowered to report crime, especially victims of, say, domestic violence, sexual type crimes, which they would not have done before. So that is a good thing. And a lot of, it's difficult to get evidence. Often some victims of that type of crime are not prepared to come forward and be a witness. So we're putting in schemes where somebody can get evidence away from the court, not in the courtroom. They can do it by Skype and all that sort of thing. I think that will help. But I do believe that if you look 10 years ago now, I think that vulnerable victims of crime are more likely now to come and report crime than they would have been 10 years ago. And that is a good thing. But it does mean that our figures go up. And of course, the other reason for figures going up is the new types of crime. So cybercrime, hate crime, and all these, they produce reports of crime. And if somebody reports a crime, it becomes an incident and it goes into the figures. And some of those are found not to have been crimes, but they still get reported as a crime. So it's about, I think, what we do with those increasing crime figures, how we approach it, and that, in my view, it is important that the residents respect and understand that the police will look into and will listen to a victim. That hasn't always been the case. And I'm sure you're aware that we have a number of historic abuse investigations going on, which may have taken 20, 30, 40 years ago. Those victims are just as much should be listened to as a victim of today. So it doesn't answer your question, but I hope it gives you an idea of some of the pressures that there are. CCTV, I mean, I don't know, I don't write out the checks, but I was told that we do help with, not to fund CCTV, but for example, I know in my patch, we pay for all the overtime when the people at CCTV runs overnight on a bank holiday or on a holiday and that sort of thing. I don't know exactly if it isn't right, but
You do, yes.
we do pay for it.
Yeah.
Right.
Just to clarify, Councillor, East Bedworth Council funds the town centre CCTV and the additional 17 dome hawk cameras, the mobile ones. That scheme is funded with funding from the PCC's office. So you do, it's not, but there's two different types. One is the fixed one, and PCC supports the mobile one. Yes.
Gypsies and travellers' powers, yes, I have to agree with you. We're going to need to change the law nationally. There are some things that could be done locally. We heard this morning that Warwick District Council have voted 170,000 extra to be spent on what we call target hardening measures, which is publicly owned land, principally by the Borough, to try and make them more difficult for travellers physically to get on them. That I think you should consider. And the other thing I think that you can affect locally is too many of our residents are employing gypsies and travellers to do jobs. They're employing them to do a new driveway or the garden, or go away and take rubbish, which they probably fly tip rather than tip away properly. So I've spoken to some of these gypsies and travellers, and I say, why do you come? They come to work, principally, and it's our residents who are employing them. So what I'm trying to do is to get across the message that when you employ a contractor or you get someone to do an odd job, find out where they come from, make sure they're accredited with some sort of organisation, and they're unlikely then to be a gypsy or a traveller. Okay. But there's some work to do nationally. Yeah, you talked about cuts. It isn't cuts. This is money which we have to distribute within our system, and in fact the officers will get a pay rise, which I totally support. It's very much deserved. They've been on a similar or a 1% wage for, you know, the arguments, for too long. The reason that we're going to have to think about it is that it hasn't come to me with any extra money so far. But I haven't had the full picture. We have 800 police staff. I have no idea what the arrangements are going to be for them. It's only the officers we've heard about, and our PCSOs and all our staff that help behind the scenes. I have no idea what's going to happen to them. So we'll have to wait and see. So I haven't said too much publicly because I haven't got the full story. But in pure numbers terms, it's going to cost us an extra 500,000. I'm going to have to find that from reserves, or if we can afford it from there, or we're going to have to make a compensating saving elsewhere. So not really a cut in funding, but it may end up with a change of, because there's only so much of a cake. If everybody gets a bigger slice, plain you get less slices that are represented by the officers. So that is an ongoing agenda. I'm going to see I've been to see the policing minister twice with the Chief Constable. We're going again to talk specifically about funding and the effect it will have on policing here in Warwickshire, which they need to know. And I've given that story to all of our members of Parliament. So they are looking at what can be done nationally as well, and they're lobbying on our behalf. We'll see how it goes.
Neil?
No, I'm all right, Chair. It's to do with the CCTVs.
Yeah, Rachel, did you want to, that was your marks you wanted to make earlier on?
Yeah.
You put that on.
About the gypsies and travellers. It will get a little bit better and easier to move the gypsies and travellers on when the site becomes available that Warwickshire County Council are putting together at the moment, and then we can move them on from the area. If they refuse to go onto the site that's provided by the council, we can actually then have them moved onto the border of Warwickshire, and then they won't be able to come back into Warwickshire. I think is it 3 months or so. So once we get the site fully up and running, it will make it a lot easier to get the unauthorised encampments moved on.
There are two bits of good news. That's the first one, the stopover site. It's Oldbury, I think, near Harts Hill. There's another one down near Southern.
Yeah.
But those two stopover sites, they both have planning permission.
Yes, they do.
The northern one, I gather, has got some drainage problems,
There's
and that's being
drainage
worked on,
issue,
and that should be up and running, I'm told, around the beginning of next year.
Yeah.
That will make life easier for the force to be able, and indeed the local authority to move people on. And the other thing is that all planning authorities have a duty to provide permanent pitches for gypsy travellers within their core strategy. I don't know how far you've got, but my advice would be, if you want to limit the number of unauthorised encampments of gypsies, get some permanent pitches in your core strategy. It's difficult, and ward members do not want them. It is difficult.
We've got some. The difficulty is, when I've spoken to the travellers that do come into the borough, there's a lot of internal traveller politics, and they refuse to go on sites. Irish travellers will not go on sites. They've got English travellers and vice versa, and you sometimes would end up with more problems than you solve, putting the two very different groups together. So it's not just appeasing the residents, you've also got to take into account the traveller politics element of it as well, because it can actually get quite vicious.
I'm aware of that.
Yeah.
There are serious organised crime groups within.
Yeah.
there are a lot of vulnerable people within the duty traveller community, and the police have a duty, as do the National Health Service and other social services, to look after their welfare as well. So this is they have every right to be there. They have been there for a long time. I'm well aware between Nuneaton and Bedworth there's a road called Gypsy Lane. Yeah. Probably been there a few hundred years. They've been around for a long time. So we do live in a tolerant society. We police by consent. So this balance of moving them on and for the benefit of our residents who are concerned, and quite rightly there's antisocial behaviour sometimes, etc., and the sort of rights of the traveller community have to be balanced, and that is why to serve or not to serve a Section 61 notice is a difficult decision, and it's made by the force after a lot of thought, and I believe they get the balance right.
And one of the biggest arguments, and I've been in a position by the public, is that the police have authority to move them on, but you don't use it very often, or you try not to use it, and the money could be saved through the councils if you did. I know you have to make sure they've got medicals and doctors or schools, or they've got to go to hospitals before you can, but you do have an authority to move people on. But it's not very often. You work with the authorities ourselves, because that's what we're set up to do. But you do have an alternative thing to do, but you do not use it regular, and that's the argument of balancing funds and doing whatever.
Actually, Chair, if I may, just on that
Yes,
point,
Bob,
actually,
yeah.
it's not the Office of the Police and Crime Commissioner that has any powers or authority to do that. That's really something to address to the police, because it's the police that are the only people that can make that operational determination.
Well, you know, I voted for that gentleman there, and I voted for that, and I've got a problem with that and on all that, and I wanted to remind him, so just when he's in a meeting somewhere and that's all crops up, then I know I've spoke to the people at the top to do it.
Yeah.
You
Well,
know,
I mean,
the police do work extremely hard, this authority, whatever.
if I can just
So I don't need a lecturer who I should ask questions or blame
Yeah.
who.
It is raised a lot. You're not the first person to raise it. It's called Section 61. Police used it 3 times last year. This year they've used it, I think probably now 14, maybe out by 1 or 2.
Yeah.
But it's more than quadruple the use of Section 61 this year. And that has been because the situation in some of those encampments has been deserving of Section 61 being deserved. And if it's a crime carried out, if it's a substantial antisocial behaviour, as there was indeed by blocking the school entrance at Camp Hill this week, was Section 61 served?
Yes.
It was. And it was proportionate to do it there. So we discussed this morning about trespass. Trespass is not a crime, it's a civil offence. So there has to be a crime committed, and more importantly, evidence of that crime being committed for the police to be able to really take action quickly and effectively. Do you want to comment on the operations?
Well, it's a fair comment around Section 61, and it's comments that are made frequently by members of the community. And if you look solely at the legislation, then it is a fair comment to make. We do, beyond that legislation, though, have a number of human rights, whether you agree with it or not, to balance. And for civil trespass, the landowner should take the lead. So we do recognise, however, that power can and should be used. And the figures you quote there, Philip, I'm not entirely sure the balance in this particular borough, but across the county,
Yeah.
then you're correct in saying that it was used 2 or 3 times last year. And so far this year, we're nearly up towards 30 times now.
Oh.
Yeah. So we recognise that actually we do have more of a role than we've played in the past. And I think hopefully demonstrated this week at Camp Hill that we are prepared to step in, when it's needed.
Lynn?
Thank you, Chair. What worries me, you say about you may have, fined £500,000. My concern is then about community policing, because you've said you're not sure what's going to happen with the PCSOs. I will stick 1,000% by the Safer Neighbourhoods team. They are the eyes, the ears for the people, and I implore you to definitely look and make sure that the Safer Neighbourhoods teams are not touched, and in fact maybe made bigger and better. And also, one of the other things that always concerns me is you said about encouraging people to record crime, and report crime, sorry. I think reporting is great. I beg people to report crime, but one of the things that needs desperately looking at is the 101 system, because to try and get through to that, people just hang up in the end because they are waiting on hold for so long, they just get fed up of it. And I do encourage people to try and hold on and try and keep reporting, and I've said this to you before, but my two concerns are 101 needs looking at, and our safe community teams need to be bolstered and kept hold of tightly, because they are our community for us people out there on the street.
I agree with you on both points. 101, I'll start with, is not good enough.
No.
I've said that to the force. They are going away and thinking how they're going to improve it. We are going to get a new operational control centre in Warwick sometime next year, and that will bring with it better telephony and reporting systems. And I think all the SAR software to make it easier for command and control and reporting and tasking, etc. So which is done through the control centre. But it's actually the same people answering 101s who are answering 999s, plainly the priority on 999. It's one of those areas at the moment, it's a pretty awful building. There are no windows in it, and it's not a brilliant place. The new one will be much, much better. So what we've got to do is try and improve the procedures and the response times. I'm well aware of that, and that is being looked at. I'm waiting for a report to come back. Safer neighbourhood teams, I couldn't agree with you more. All of us who see the police tend to, would probably almost 9 out of 10 times it'll be a safer neighbourhood team member. Visibility is very important for our communities. They play a big role in the prevention, protection on behalf of us all. They actually play a role in the search and detection of serious and organised crime, counter-terrorism, and they are absolutely vital to the police in Warwickshire. Now, some forces have downgraded them or got rid of them altogether. That will not happen under my watch. But I also have to bear in mind that if there's a road accident, I need a response team to get there as soon as possible, or the police do. If there is a threat to life somewhere, we need a response. So there has to be a certain amount of people who must be able to respond quickly to incidents that happen. I'm afraid we have a lot of people looking at cybercrime, child sexual exploitation, and some of the things domestic, and you won't see them, but I can assure you they're working just as hard as everybody else, and they are important. So what I'm really saying is, yes, the SMTs are important, but so are lots and lots of other parts of the police force. How I give the principal the money, actually how he deploys it is his decision, but I can have an effect on that, and I can ask, why have you done this, or why don't you do that, why have you done that? So there are ways where I hope that we will end up with the right balance. All I promise you is that whatever funds we have, however we pay for it, we will strive to make the productivity of each individual police officer as high as possible, which is important. In fact, the new mobile communications that with smartphones and laptops and everything should enable an individual officer to work an extra hour out of every 8. So that no longer will they have to go back to the station, type up a statement, go back, get it signed. That can all be done on site now, and that will help productivity. So Rome wasn't built in a night, but I think that things are looking better, and we will continually push the force to become efficient and productive.
Jude?
Can I just clarify one more thing, Chair? The travellers that got moved from Camp Hill today are actually on Heckley Field in Bedworth. 16 caravans.
Council have started seems to move.
Directions.
But I'm just saying they've moved from Nuneaton into Bedworth.
Yeah, we've saved them this afternoon.
Yeah.
And we're in court Monday.
I mean, that's the irony. The quicker we move them on, they'd probably go somewhere just down the road.
If the transition site, we could have actually escorted them to the border of Warwickshire, so they would
That's
have been there.
I think the point to note about the transit site provision though is...
Yes, I will come to you in a minute.
Okay.
We're not having a free-for-all. Jude?
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Tremors was quite quick to defend the Commissioner about he not being responsible for policing, which is acceptable. But he is
Point of
responsible.
order, Chair, I didn't actually say that. What I said, Chair, was that you were saying you need to, the Police and Crime Commissioner isn't operationally in charge of the police, was the only point I was making.
I think we're all well aware of that, but the Commissioner does have a responsibility for scrutinising the Chief Constable and the work that he does and holding the police force to account. Moving on to the point about the gypsies, section, whatever it was, 61 was served on Camp Hill. We're all very grateful for that. Why can't it be served in Exhall, the same as it was in Camp Hill?
That's an operational decision. I don't really want to comment. I suspect it's being looked at, the situation being assessed. Each situation is different.
But they have the power to do it.
They have to weigh up to see whether, under the law...
It's no, I'm sorry, Chairman. Councillor Golby is shaking her head at me.
Yes.
The police do have the power to move them. They proved it in Camp Hill this morning.
They do have, sorry, I'm not going to get in a cargo across there. They do have the authority. There's various rules they have to apply
Thank
for,
you.
but they do have the authority to do it. We do know that because I was in chair and much knowledge about it, whatever, but they do.
I mean, I
How
don't...
to use it, and this is what, I know you're in a different position, we've got a gentleman here that's doing whatever, but the thing is, at the end of the day, this authority, with the same as other sides that have argued with the police from, and you're the guy in charge, and if we're not getting things to move in there, you should be notified, or the deputy or whoever it is should be acknowledged that, hold on a minute, there's something not quite happening for the public, and that's the point we're really making. We're not criticising the, but they do have the authority to move on, and that's what Nidal does. They use it sometimes there, then they don't use it somewhere else, and that's the authorities. As you know, it costs a lot of money. They keep coming in, and the public, not me, the public do ask them why aren't the police. I got Arbery when they were all down there. We put a fence up all in there. That was what nearly. It was really a bad one. Why had the police move in? They didn't move in. We had to do it all again, but they had the authority to do so. But anyway, that's not. We're not going to go anymore.
I don't think I want to
keep
comment.
picking things out. And
Yeah, I don't want to comment on a specific ongoing situation because I don't know the full facts.
Okay.
But all I know is from the Chief Constable downwards, they will be concerned about it. They will understand your concern and our residents' concerns, and they will do everything they can in their power to move it on.
Sure. Yes.
I would just like to say that when I've been on active encampments, the police get a lot of stick, and they are, some cases, very demoralised, having to step aside and let the travellers onto sites. And as far as the travellers go with the section 61s, are they committing a crime or are they committing a civil offence? If it's a civil offence, then it's our responsibility. Action's been taken. If they're committing a crime, I'm sure you would look into it and put into action the relevant legal procedures to move them on like you did at Camp Hill. There's a fine line of definition, and it's unfair to keep saying that the police can move on, the police can move on. I've been in those situations where the police have had to stand aside and they would love nothing more to move them on. I mean, I've literally stood toe to toe with these travellers, and they are travellers, they're not gypsies. There's also a definition between gypsies and travellers. The ones we're talking about are the travellers that set up the illegal encampments, generally not gypsies. There's very different definitions between gypsies, travellers and show people, and I think that gets confused a lot by people as well. And there are very different definitions there, but for the majority of the time these are travellers, and they are setting up illegal encampments, but they are committing civil offences, not criminal offences. When the criminal offences are in play, they do get moved on, and you know, I'm sure everybody knows what my feelings are on travellers. It's not exactly as though I'm quiet about it, and I am as frustrated as anybody. But I've been there, and the police officers have had to stand aside, and they don't like to do it. I don't like to see it happen, but it happens because they're not committing a criminal offence. They're committing a civil offence, and they can't do anything about civil offences. We have to do that instead.
Very
Well,
good
there's your-
defence
there's
of the
your-
police there,
There's
Chair.
your defence of the police, so you don't have to answer that question.
Sorry?
Thank you.
Well,
You're going to go out there and talk to the...
Yeah, I agree with
Anyway,
everything.
I'm not going to get in an argument, debate whether
Councillor
you're
Goldberg
right or
said.
wrong, or
Yeah.
whether you go in on site or whether... All I'm telling you what the public is saying and how they feel about it. Obviously, you've got to get a message to various communities and what's happening and whatever. But all they see is police. Why aren't they carrying it out? There are different sections, we know, the various things, what they must check before they can move them and all the rest of it.
I've listened to what everybody's said.
I'm not going to let it labour on. I think you've got a message quite clear that wherever, and to do that.
Liam's been indicating something.
I'm going to move it on. Nuneaton Justice Centre, police station.
Yep.
Strategically, what plans have you got for that? Because the opening hours are closing. People are concerned about not being able to use the place when they're required to use it. It's gone from 24 hours now to 6:30 at night. It's closing. You know, residents are concerned about
I
that.
will talk generally, and I'll let
Yeah.
I'll let the inspector talk about the exact timings and things. The Justice Centre in Leamington is the envy of most forces and police commissioners in the country, as is our Justice Centre in Leamington. You asked about its future. It is absolutely going to be part of everything we do going forward. It is the centre of a number of police operations within the council that are there. That we have partners in the building, as you know. There's the courts, there's the probation service.
Sorry, are we
all that.
talking about Warwick or Nuneaton?
Nuneaton, I was asked about.
Nuneaton.
They're both, in fact, they're both the same. And yeah, I go to Nuneaton Justice Centre quite a lot. Now, there has just been a change of opening hours, which I understand is based on its usage. But do you want to say what's happened?
Well, I believe, I don't want to appear obstructive, but I don't have anything to do with how front offices are managed, I'm afraid. But what I can say is that yes, their opening hours have been made that decision to pull back slightly. I believe it's 6:30. Albeit that some of the staff, you have to give a certain period of notice to change their shifts, and whilst you might expect plenty of people happy to have an earlier finish, there are a number of staff at the meeting that have chosen to carry on working their approved hours, so it will be open slightly later for the next couple of months. The decision to pull those hours slightly back, I would imagine, is being based around cost and cost savings, and the decisions around the hours that have been lost made around times of peak or less peak demand. I suppose the only thing to say other than that is that there are always police officers or staff in the building. There's a yellow phone outside, so if anybody was desperately needed contact, that phone goes straight through to the control room, we radio through for somebody to come out.
And plainly it's important that the public have access to the police. More people are doing things online, and they're just the usage of police stations right across Warwickshire. The number of the public going in has been dropping. So we've got we have to balance up the cost benefit.
I was just worried about whether or not it's under capacity there. If there are other things that could be done there, you know, that are in Leamington. I mean, with great respect, I know Leamington's very, very good. But when we lost our courts and it moved down to Leamington, I don't know what the crime rate is centrally around Leamington and Warwick and Stratford compared to what it is in Nuneaton, North Warwickshire, maybe Rugby, you know. And you shouldn't be kind to criminals, I suppose, but a lot of the crime happens up here, and the people are up here, you know. And I couldn't see the justification of why the courts will actually move down to Leamington at the time, although that was before.
Well, the courts have moved. They still have civil justice.
Yes, but not criminal.
The criminal is done in Leamington. I'm actually taking up swords with the court service recently. They've decided to move the youth justice to Coventry from Leamington. That's not helpful to us. So we're finding out. But where the courts want to do their thing, where they're based, they've gone regional. They've all contracted in our area in Birmingham, and they've plainly been suffering financial pressures as well. But I can only try and persuade them to do something. I can't tell them to do it, sadly. But all I can assure you is that it is absolutely in my interest as the owner of the Nuneaton Justice Centre to make sure that it is, and I need to make sure that it's properly maintained, so it needs to be full. I want to see Nuneaton Justice Centre continue to flourish and to be full of people working there on all aspects of the criminal justice system, please. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to take a couple more speakers and then, because I think we've done a good session. One here, and then Chris. Rob, you put your hand up quite a while ago, so I'll let you go first, then your good self, and then Chris, and then we'll come to a conclusion.
Thank you, Chair. It was just a comment on the transit sites that are being proposed to be provided. Once they are in place, it will depend on police resources to go out in the first place to move them onto those sites. So in the West Midlands, where they've also already got a transit site, Stanwell have just introduced one. We're waiting to see the impact that that's going to have on the police, because it's all about the police availability at that time. So it won't be the complete solution.
No, but it'll help.
It'll help.
Chair, I just wanted to echo your point that you were raising earlier and tie that in with the point Councillor Golby made. You're quite right. The police have the power to move travellers on under Section 61, but they only have that power if crime has been evidenced. And so, to your point, I would just like us as a committee and the councillors on here to go back to residents and say, please report the crimes that you see. The police can't use Section 61 if they can't evidence that crimes have happened. They don't have a blanket power to move at their discretion travellers on. They only can invoke that power if a crime's been committed. And what we found when we've been round, and it's happened in my area, we know there's been a lot of traveller encroachments in my patch. And when I've knocked the door with residents and they've said, oh, I saw this happen, and they've committed a crime, it's, did you report it? Oh no, I thought somebody else had. And you get the same story at the next door and the next door. What we have to tell residents is, no, please report it. Don't assume somebody else has. Don't assume that the neighbours nearer, slightly nearer where the crime happened, have reported it. If you saw it, please dial 101. Or if there's risk to life and limb, never hesitate to dial 999.
Chris.
First of all, Chair, apologies for my lateness. Looks like the police were rather busy on the M6 just. I'd like to ask what sort of funding is available for the police to train up more people on the off-road motorcycles, because we have got motorcycles in the Bedworth, and one of our biggest problems is off-road bikers. When you've only got one trained person to ride, really, I have a bit of a problem getting people out to catch the criminals.
Right, well, I'll ask Jeff to comment in a minute, but those off-road cycles that were funded by my predecessor, by my office, they're specifically there, obviously, to deal with mainly rural crime, hence being off-road, and I have heard some quite good reports that they have achieved. I don't know how many people are trained, or they're all kept at Bedworth.
I don't have the exact figures, but you are correct. There's a struggle to release the people that are trained from their other duties to get out and onto the bike. So
it wasn't a criticism. It was
it
was asking if there's any more funding available to train other officers to get at, so that we can get full use of motorcycles rather than sitting in a shed.
So over the summer, for example, we put some money aside out of overtime budgets, and that paid for some of their deployments over the summer months. And next month, yes, in October, the money that Mr. Second was put in to buy more kit, because kit is essential, and the actual, whatever they wear, is fairly expensive. That has now been purchased, and training courses are running in October for a cohort of, I think, about 8 more people, which should increase the capacity. And then the instruction, after they've been trained, is that it's not area specific, in the sense that if you have a Nuneaton officer that's been trained, you don't just have to be Nuneaton. But that will also apply conversely. So if we've got officers trained from anywhere in the county, and of course we have to bear in mind that Nuneaton and Bedworth do suffer probably disproportionately from other areas, is that they can then be pulled across. So it should, after next month, have more capacity.
And I met four the other day in North Warwickshire, and 2 of them are specials actually. So if it's a specific operation, it's just the sort of thing a special can come in to do.
Well, thank you very much. I think we've covered quite a lot tonight, and I hope everybody's may not suffer, but pleased to hear the comments you've been passed on. Thanks for coming to Nuneaton and give us a report and answering the questions that's done there. Keep us safe and sound. Look after us. And once again, thank you for...
I'd be happy to come back again, probably not every
Please do.
meeting. Perhaps a little further down the road, I'd be happy to come back.
When you do next time, do that, get some of these crime figures that you've now produced, we've got down on the documents, everyone's going on, but I'm sure the police officer today will be answering some of those. So once again, have a safe journey and thanks for being with us.
Thank you.
Right, we're now on, the gentleman hasn't arrived, so we're on Community Safety Park Performance, page 18. Okay, that's Rachel.
That's me,
And
yeah.
wait a minute, let me get to me, 18. I hope that, right, out, it's all yours.
Thank you. Can I just check, councillors, whether you've got colour copies if you would like some copies? Chair, so the report that you've got in front of you this evening is the first quarter for 2017-18 on performance in relation to the Nuneaton and Bedworth Safe Communities Partnerships priorities. There are 3 appendices this evening. One of them is this one that you are used to getting. There is, just to draw to your attention, there's actually an error on here where it says crime and unsocial behaviour performance. It says quarter 4 for 2016-17. Everything on here is for 2017-18, it's just that when the report's been produced, that element hasn't been changed. And the same for the second column, it says quarter 1 for 17-18, the first column should read quarter 1 for 16-17, okay? So I'll take you through that in a moment. At the last meeting, you asked for an additional breakdown of violent crime figures, which you've got included within Appendix B. And then furthermore, you asked for a breakdown of historical sex offences, which you've got in Appendix C. So we'll go through those and we can take questions as we go along, as we normally do. So first of all, on the quarter performance, pretty much the same picture as of the end of quarter 4 last financial year. You'll see there for most crimes, this situation is that the incidents have increased. So for violence against the person and sexual offences, you'll see there that compared to the baseline, it's up by 3%. Violence against the person with injury, again, is up by 4%. Violence against the person without injury is up by 8%. And rape is up by 24%. In relation to sexual offences, that's an increase of 5%. And then you may recall that the burglary dwelling figures are now known as residential burglary. So burglary dwelling as a figure doesn't necessarily exist anymore, but as a comparison, taking out previous burglary dwelling and looking at residential burglary, which it is now called, you'll see that there's been an increase there of 4%. We can't offer a comparison in relation to burglary in businesses, so you'll just see a figure there for last year. There's no details in there for this year. Antisocial behaviour has decreased by 2%, and small deliberate fires have increased by 8%. Total recorded crime, therefore, overall is an increase of 6%. The table beneath is just those kind of figures, just shown in a different way, just on the quarter. If you turn to the top of the page on the right-hand side, you've got a trend line, which is violence against the person and sexual offences, and you can see the trends are steadily increasing over the years. Beneath that, you've got domestic burglary and burglary other offences. Again, kind of peaks and troughs over the years. Beneath that, you'll have the antisocial behaviour incidents. So you've got a line there for the total ASB, and you can see it has decreased since 2014 over time. Your nuisance is kind of plateaued out, and again you'll see the same for the personal and the environmental. If you turn over the page, again a request of this group is for us to tell you about domestic abuse. So we do that in relation to the violence against a person with injury offences. So total of those for quarter 1 there were 388. The The total violence against a person with injury offences relating to domestic abuse were 139, which represents 36% of the overall figure. You'll see beneath that the trend line for total recorded crime, and again, as I said, that's increased by 6%. Moving over to antisocial behaviour, the three categories of antisocial behaviour, you'll see there that overall there's been an increase to date. For environmental, there's an increase on the previous quarter. The reduction in personal, personal tends to have the greatest impact, so that's the one that we tend to focus on as a partnership. We look at the vulnerability of people around that. And then volume-wise, you'll see there that nuisance has been an increase on nuisance. Beneath that are the cross-cutting themes. These aren't necessarily our priorities, but we do like to keep a watching brief on what's happening generally in terms of the traditional crimes. And you'll see there have been certain increases in crime types across all of them. If we turn on to the final page, these are the beat areas. Sometimes this is a bit of a misleading kind of diagram because it focuses upon volume and it provides a comparison to the same period the previous year. The problem with that is that sometimes the volume is shrouded because it's got a reduction from last year, so it looks green, so we do kind of have to look at that. For the partnership at the moment, they have prioritised the Abbey Ward, and they've been working with the community within the Abbey Ward on a range of issues that are being experienced there. We've asked for further information on crimes happening in St Nicholas and Weddington and Whitestone, and that's because you can see that those are kind of higher figures than we would expect for those areas, so we're doing a piece of work around that. So that's the overall quarter performance. Are you happy for me to move on to the next appendix?
Anybody want to
Yeah, I just
get
want
your
to
minds
comment
going?
on that.
Yes, Stuart.
Rachel has just said about St Nicholas, Weddington and Whitestone having the higher figures, but it looks very much to me as though Wenbrook South has got a much higher figure.
Yeah.
Camp Hill has got a much higher figure than that. So they're not, and the, you know, what's being done in those areas is to help with those increased figures.
So in those areas where it continues to happen within them, what we've identified is that it is unusual for those wards that we've picked up on and that I've mentioned. It's unusual for them to have the increases that they've had. So we're trying to unpick and understand what that has been. So it doesn't mean that we've ignored the other ward. It's just that out of interest, it's like why is St Nicholas as much as it is, because it is unusual for that to happen. Okay.
Just on that point, is it you're not looking at the total figure, you're looking at the amount that it's jumped up by?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, it's unusual for that to happen.
On the antisocial behaviour, would you say that there are a sort of core of people that are repeat offenders on this? These are not 1,000 people committing 1,000 incidents, these are a certain group of people that are repeating constantly?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay.
Are you happy for me to go on to appendix?
Following on, what work are you doing in St Nick, Weddington and Whitestone?
Sorry?
What work are you doing?
Which one? We're trying to identify what we need to do.
Yeah,
first.
how are you doing it? Yeah.
By working with the analysts. So the analysts are unpicking what they are. Because initially we thought that they were acquisitive crimes, but I don't think they are. You can see.
Well, St Nicholas total offences, although it's gone up by 58, the other two sections are in the green.
Yeah.
You know.
Which is what we're trying to understand. We're trying to unpick actually what is the reason for that.
Well, you could go to Poplar and say, what's the reason for total offences actually going up? Now, you say there's work going on there in these other places that were far greater record of total offences. Has any analysis been done there on what's causing those?
there's always analysis. I mean, if you take Abbey as an example, there is a wide range of analysis that we've done that you have been
Yes,
you
I
have
have.
been part of.
Yeah, I was asking about other wards.
Yeah, I mean, we do look at the other wards and trying to understand them. It's just that in particular within NABSCOP at the last meeting, we wanted to understand what was happening in those. It doesn't mean that all of the other wards are ignored. It's just unusual for those areas to increase by that amount. I mean, please be reassured. You can see on here the volume in the different wards, and there are different interventions that happen in those wards. We don't ignore them. We were just keen to understand what lay behind them there.
Just a very quick comment, Chair. I think at the NABSCOP meeting, the fact that crime doubled in Wellington was just anomalous. So why wouldn't you look at it? You know, if it doubles in an area, I mean, others have gone up by a meaningful percentage, but a doubling just leapt off the page. I know that the crime in absolute total for Wellington isn't that huge, but the trend is alarming. So just to do some additional work to unpick that seemed reasonable, I think, to the NABSCOP members. Thank you, Chair.
That's right.
It doesn't seem reasonable to me, to be honest. If you've got a double on a small number, it's still a small number, and there are other areas that are more needed.
Could I just clarify? I think all Rachel was saying is that we've asked for some further analysis. We haven't flooded those wards with our resources. We just want to understand if there is anything we can do, which we will only understand through the analysis. Not that those are the 3 wards we're focusing our resources on at the moment.
Okay, you happy for me to move on to the next appendix?
Are we all happy for the moment up to this stage? Yes, Rachel, please.
Okay, thank you. So this one looks a little bit like that. It's all the lines. At the last meeting, you asked for a breakdown of violence against the person and sexual offences, which you have got in front of you. These figures are for the quarter. These figures include the first quarter and July. So you'll see on here that during that period there are a total of 1,325 offences, and you can see how they've been broken down there, which is what you were interested in the last meeting. So you've got your crime tree categories. You've got 716 violence against a person without injury, 489 violence against a person with injury. Other sexual offences, 65, rape 24. And you can see that some of them didn't match on the crime tree lookup. I might need some help on explaining what that is because I don't understand it.
Is that the second time?
Yeah.
What that means is that if we come across an instance, say for example a domestic incident where it is an argument only, so there's no crime, it's just an argument, we still raise a crime report. So it's not a substantive offence, but it's just a way of us recording it. So you need to take those figures out, which is what's happened there.
Okay. So you can see there what the breakdown there is, and then you've got the remaining 9 offences. And then furthermore, if you go to the next page, which is page 28, you've got a breakdown of rape, so there were 24 recorded during that period. And you can see what the breakdown of that is in relation to, I guess, victim categories. Have I missed? Oh, hang on, I've got to page that one. Apologies, I've jumped down. Sorry. I'll go back to page 25, which is violence against a person without injury offences. So there are 716 recorded. Sorry, then.
Sure. You finished?
No, I waited till Lynn wanted to ask me a question.
Well, I'll do that for you, because normally I didn't know where you'd finished talking.
No.
You're okay
no.
now, you just took a breath and I thought, well,
Yeah, the only thing that ever concerns me with crime recording is it gets changed, categories get changed so often, and it skews the figures. And, you know, time after time, and I'm not criticising your report at all, but time after time you come to this table and the figures look all skewed compared to last time because crime recording has changed. So categories have changed when you phoned up and I've said, or I've smacked my husband in the gob, you'll then say, well, that's domestic violence, and then the next time you come and say, well, that's Lynn getting the better of her husband. So it worries me that these figures get skewed every time we have a report, because the crime recording gets changed. And I know it's governmental courts is this, not yourselves, and I do appreciate that. But I've sat on this panel for so long now, and it's the same old thing every single time. And even though this has given us a better breakdown, which is fantastic, it still worries me that it's the categories get changed, and I still can't get a true figure.
Yeah, I think part of providing this was to kind of furnish everybody with an understanding of what those categories were. And because there are new categories that I understand were introduced, which were around about malicious communications and those kind of things. So actually, you think of violence in a traditional sense, it's somebody, like you say, thumping somebody, but actually there are other categories that are included, which is what people had asked for, you know, a broader explanation. So you'll see on page 25, you've got a breakdown of violence against the person offences without injury, and you've got a whole kind of range there. I mean, if you look at the second one on there, it's send letter, communication, article conveying indecent or an offensive message. You know, that's not the traditional kind of thought around violent crime. And furthermore, I mean, you've got a breakdown of other details there. If you turn over the page to page 26, violence against the person with injury, you've got 489 recorded, and again you can see a range of offences there. And one interesting one is the dangerous dog out of control in the public, and again, you know, it's not something that you consider as a violent crime on looking at figures, so you can see that there. And then if you move on to page 27, there are other sexual offences, so there are 65 recorded during that period, and you've got a breakdown there of those details. And then finally on page 28, which I've already picked up on, you've got the rape details. So hopefully that will give you an overview of the violent crime and how it is made up. We looked at in NABSCOP, and we wanted this information, wanted to check whether we were applying our funding in the correct areas, and we were reassured that we most definitely were. When we look at the funding that we get from the PCC's office, it is aligned to these priorities. So we were reassured that, you know, it was positive. If I may, can I move on to the final appendix? Is that okay?
Your report, you whatever.
Thank you. Okay, so the final appendix was about one of the other things that you were interested in was what was the difference between kind of current sexual offences and historic. So what you've got here is a breakdown of that from 2012 to 2017. And you can see how many are current, less than 28 days, 28 days to a year to 5 years, and over 5 years. And again, that will give you an overview that they're not current, they're not all current crimes, there are historical ones in there. And then again, it's the same kind of breakdown for the sexual offences.
I mean, we have tended to report, haven't we, previously, that the split tends to be 50-50. I think that roughly backs that up there.
Yeah, I just asked the question at what point, following on from Lynn's point regarding changing of reporting, stats, etc. At what point is there a feeling from the Commissioner and from the police that, because we are told that more people are reporting things and crime could look worse than what it is because it's being reported more, at what point would we be able to, as a committee, actually turn around and say, well, I can see an improvement. You know, how long are these stats going to stay the way they are, or the reporting procedure going to stay the way it is? For how long? I mean, is it 12 months? Are we going to be here in 12 months' time and looking and thinking, well, yes, there has been an improvement in X, Y and Z, because we're using the same reporting and the same stats as what we did 12 months ago. You know, has anyone got an idea?
Well, I'm happy just to comment on that. The Chief Constable has the duty to employ Warwickshire Police to react and respond, to prevent and protect from what's happening on the ground. What these statistics provide all of us is what is happening on the ground to the best of our ability in recording. Now, it's really important to compare year on year, because as you say, things are improving, we're getting something right, or things aren't improving, what can we do to stop that?
Yeah.
So, I have no idea what statistics will be in 12 months' time, they'll be what they are, but they will be interesting and they will be absolutely vital for the Chief Constable and indeed the area inspectors and things to be able to sort of command and control their team.
Rachel, you wanted to comment?
That was okay, it's fine. It's done.
Sorry, go ahead.
It's a fair point you make. It's perfectly valid, and it's questions that we ask within the police as well.
Yeah.
Because I certainly don't enjoy coming to you and showing you big pages in red, and within the police we don't enjoy looking at it either. The problem is cutting through those figures and establishing where real term increases are, because there have been real term increases.
Yeah.
We can't, by no means would I sit here and say we can write everything off to the new crime recording standards,
No.
because we can't do that. But the difficulty is trying to cut through and realise what is a result of that and what isn't. If you ask for what the feeling is in the police, very unscientific, but what is the feeling, we don't feel that the local community or society has become more violent. We have seen, I would suggest, real terms increases in acquisitive crime. And so it's just trying to work out where we can focus our efforts to try and have some kind of impact. We felt that certainly, well, in fact, we felt last recording year we've started to get our new baseline. Then we've come into this year and we're told actually probably we won't get another baseline till next. So in the meantime, we've got to use our analysts to cut through that detail and give us something to work with, but it is difficult.
Thank you.
Okay. Finish?
Yeah.
Okay, well done. Any further comments with regard to that? No? Thank you very much for your report. Right, the bill has arrived. So what I'm going to do, because we do have a member of the public in this group, I'm going back to the number one. Children. Go to children's centres.
Thank you. Excuse me, Sean, I'm just going to take my leave. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for being with us. Thanks for it so much. Are you okay waiting for the report, or you?
No, I'll wait for the report.
You're okay for it, and then I'll let you come back in. Okay, well, it's all yours.
Thank you. You've all received the consultation document, which was circulated as part of the there are two drivers behind the consultation. First is financial. Town Council are looking at £67 million worth of savings over the next 3 years. In terms of children and families business unit, in which I work, we're looking at £10 million worth of savings over the next 3 years. What that means for children's centres is that the current budget that we have of 4.8 million is looking at a 23% reduction over the next 3 years by 1.12, so the budget will be 3.7 million from April 2018. So it's significant financial challenges that we are facing and ones that we have faced over the last 5 or 6 years. The other key driver for us is that as a county council as a whole, we're looking to transform the way that we deliver services, and part of that is related to obviously the financial climate in which we're operating in, and certainly again the children and families business unit is going through a wholesale transformation, trying to make our services more localised, more integrated, and working in partnership with other agencies, and that very much recognises and builds on our experiences thus far, where families require a multi-agency approach rather than individual services operating separately. The proposals are contained within the consultation document. At the moment we have 39 children's centres that offer services to 0 to 5 year olds. The proposal is that we move towards 12 family hubs, and at this stage I would say that they are proposals, nothing is set in stone. The consultation period, which ended 3 days ago, is now being analysed, and so we are very much at the proposal stage. The plan was to retain 12 of those as family hubs, to broaden the age range to 0 to 19 or 0 to 25 in the case of parents who have children with disabilities, and that again is very much along the whole family principles and in recognition that the majority of families that we work with extend beyond solely the 0 to 5 age range, and the idea of providing those services in an integrated manner is one that we're proposing going forward. For Nuneaton and Bedworth, the proposals again are listed within the consultation document. The proposal at this stage is that we retain 4 centres as family hubs, and the location of those in Bedworth, it's St Michael's, and then a proposal to retain 3 within Nuneaton, and at the moment those centre upon Abbey, Camp Hill and Stockingford. So that at the moment is what has been proposed. The consultation period started on the 29th of June and it concluded on the 11th of September. We've made a small extension in order to accommodate the scrutiny committee meeting today, and any comments that we receive will be considered as part of that formal consultation process. But we've had 94 face-to-face events over that 11-week period, 12 consultation events, and numerous drop-in consultations that myself and other officers have had within the children's centres across Warwickshire, and also visits from Councillor Morgan, who's our portfolio holder, across many children's centres. So we've had 94 of those. We've also had an electronic questionnaire that was available on the web. We've had 2,000 responses electronically. We've also had another 200 that have come through hard copy. And what we're doing now is analysing those over the next few weeks, with a view to presenting a final proposal to Warwickshire County Council Cabinet on the 9th of November, and that final proposal will obviously reflect comments that we've received and analysed during the consultation process. So that's kind of where we're at the moment, an overview of where we're at in terms of the consultation. More than happy to take any questions. Obviously I'll log any comments that are made today, and we will then feed those into the wider consultation that we've received over the last 15 weeks.
Thank you. The lady at the back is a member of the public who spoke earlier because she thought she was over here. She managed to stick it, and I said I would let her, because I think she made some excellent points. So if you would like to come forward and put your points again, please do. You sit down if you want to.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I'll just read it again. Tonight you're going to hear from Priority Families about the proposals to redesign services for children aged 0 to 5. You will hear how this redesign will streamline services, making them more accessible to everyone rather than just a few, and how these changes will mean a brighter future for our children. I'm here tonight to ask you to please see past the selling pitch. I'm asking you to think about what will happen if volunteers just don't step forwards to run the remaining centres, and what will happen if people are then expected to pay for the services they once accessed for free, despite many families not having enough money to put food on the table, never mind get on a bus. The level of skill the children's centre staff have is immeasurable. How much will it cost to train new staff, and will they be as capable at spotting possible safeguarding issues as the current staff? How much money has been spent so far on the consultation process? Is it not wasting money in order to save money? These proposals actually risk costing a lot more later down the line, when parents that can't access the same level of support as they do now end up suffering more with mental health issues, unemployment and many more issues that could have been prevented with the help from children's centres. We also stand to lose a generation of children with health and learning problems due to a lack of easy access to early intervention and the professional services offered at children's centres. These children risk not being picked up until school years, then requiring more extensive and costly intervention.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I see the pen working extremely well.
Yes.
You got that on board, and I think it was even important for it to actually say directly to you, rather than us trying to repeat, because we're bound to miss something. Members want to comment, or would you like any comment, might make comment on what you just heard, or okay?
Well, we've been liaising with
Have lots of
Jess
discussion.
over the last 11 weeks,
That's okay.
and certainly we'll add that to the body of evidence that we've received. Make sure it's noted.
Lynn?
Chair, it just worries me the consultation period. It was happened right in the middle of the summer holidays. So where most people would like to have asked questions by the schools and things like that, you know, it wasn't accessible. So I think the timing of it, I do admit there was a general election that got in the way, so I do apologise for that. That wasn't that to do with me. But it's just a fact when the consultation period, there was a 6-week school holiday. And people, you know, haven't got the time or the inclination to do certain things like this. It just worries me, like this young lady has said, the services we are going to lose. And as a volunteer myself, we have so many barriers put in our way to volunteer that you are not going to get the people out there to be able to do this, because volunteering is getting so very difficult, because you have to evidence that you are not working. You have to evidence to benefits people and everybody else that you are only volunteering. And it gets so scary when your money is actually going to be affected that volunteers are walking away. So saying that you are going to use volunteers is a very, very sticky line you're hitting, and it does need to be looked at.
Yeah, thank you.
If I could just respond to those. I mean, the timing issue has been raised, and to some extent we've been affected, partly by the fact that we need to make savings from April next year, and the fact that, I mean, obviously we always knew that there was going to be a county council election. The intention then was to start the consultation as early as possible in June. What we couldn't have factored in is that there would be a general election as well, and that then led to another delay until we got the general election. That said, in recognition of the fact that the schools were going to be off for 6 weeks, what we tried to do is have an almost equal period. So we've had an 11 weeks consultation. So 5 of those 11 have been when schools have been around, and we've done everything we can to alert this to schools' attention so that they can feed into the consultation process. In terms of volunteers, again, that's been raised during consultation. We have made reference to volunteers, but we've also made quite clear that where services need to be delivered by professionals, they will still be delivered by professionals. And what I would say is that at the moment children's centres are using volunteers as well. They have volunteer coordinators. So that model is already in operation, and one that we want to kind of build on and learn from going forward. But I absolutely take your point that we can't take volunteers for granted, and we do need to be careful about where and when we use those volunteers.
Chris?
Right, I'll have a few for you, but before I ask any of the others, I want to ask you how your consultation works.
In terms of?
Well, I know I've worked with officers quite a bit over the years, so I know certain officers that would say, I've sent 100 letters out, I've had 1 back, so the other 99 can't be bothered, so it must be all right to do it. So is that what you're going to do? You're going to say, well, we've sent 50,000 letters out, we've had nothing back, so it must be all right to close the centres?
No. I mean, you know, what we've recognised that people like to consult in a variety of mechanisms. So we've not just relied on the electronic questionnaire, we've not just relied on the links. We've tried to use as many agencies as we can to kind of circulate the links to their network. So we've not just gone through, you know, the usual routes that we have. To supplement that electronic link, we've also conducted consultation events. We've contacted agencies directly. We've gone to the children's centres. We've asked them to circulate and publicise as widely as possible. We've had online forums. So we've used a variety of mechanisms that we can in order to ensure that we've got depth and breadth of coverage in terms of the consultation. Have we reached everybody? I mean, I think with most consultations we've done the best that we can, you know, within the period. You know, there will always be people out there that are hard to reach, and we've tried our best through a variety of mechanisms to ensure that we capture as many views as possible.
Right, okay, so you won't be able to answer me next to specific numbers, but if you can give me roughly. So how many residents are you talking about that this will affect?
In terms of residents, I mean, it's a difficult one, and we've got data in terms of 0 to 5-year-olds across the county. But what I would say is not all of those 0 to 5-year-olds access children's centres at this moment. We do have footfall numbers in terms of children's centres and registered users. If I can forward those to you outside of the meeting, I'm more than happy to do so.
Yeah, well, if you forward them to Shirley, if you could have some footfall numbers on that, that'd be useful. And so, how many responses have you received up to now? Or would you be, so you've got no idea on that?
No, as I mentioned earlier, we've had, in terms of the electronic questionnaire, we've had over 2,000 responses to that electronic questionnaire. We've also had just over 200 written submissions as well. That is in addition to the parents that we've spoken to at the drop-in consultation events that we've had, and also the larger set-piece events, of which there were 12 across the county.
And how are you taking petitions?
The petitions have been received, and obviously we will consider those as part of the consultation process.
Okay. Does it have to be over a certain amount of names before you take it seriously, or are you just taking each name of each petition as a response?
I would say that we would take each, you know, this is not about numbers, it's, you know, if we talk to a parent.
So it is about numbers.
No, but what I would say is that, you know, if we have interviewed a parent and a parent has given us views, we've liaised with Jess on a number of occasions, that will have as much weight as you know, any other response that we receive. So we take each response that we've received seriously, and we have to take it seriously as part of the consultation process.
Okay, so again, can you forward to Shirley on the policy that you've got at county on petitions? Because I'd like to know that if it has to be over 2,000 name petition before you take it seriously, then that's fine, but we just need to know that. If it's every name on the petition, as you just said, that would be even better, because I can try and get some more petitions going. So if you could forward that response on to Shirley, so that she can get it out to everybody, that'd be good. Have you got any idea on how much this consultation has cost up to now?
We would need to, you know, go back and check on that. But the one thing I would say is that by law, any changes to children's centres require consultation. We've conducted consultation in the past. Every other local authority that has gone through this process, of which there are many up and down the country, will have conducted a consultation process, and consultation processes cost. But the balance that you need to make is do you try and do a very basic, a very limited a very not engaging consultation and open yourself up to challenge, or do you try and make it as inclusive as possible, which we believe we've tried to do in this case?
No, I believe you should have consultation. It's just that only when the consultation is taken seriously. But when you can word consultate, you can put consultate, you can make consultations work out however you want. You can make them work for the county, you can make them work against the county, you know that as well as anybody else around here. So when the final bill comes in for the consultation, then if you could let us know that as well, that would be good. And also the Jeff Morgan's visits to the buildings, have we been paying for officer time and paying for the buildings for them?
Sorry, okay.
When Jeff Morgan's been visiting people throughout the community, have we been paying for buildings, hire of buildings and officer time to accompany him, or?
No, because they're drop-ins at children's centres, so we have coordinated our drop-ins to those children's centres in consultation with the people who are running those centres to ensure that we speak to as many parents as possible.
So they're all been free then?
As far as I'm aware, because we've been going in when those centres are open.
Okay, that's good.
I just want to follow up on what Chris is saying regarding consultation, Chair, very quickly. I just wonder what the weighting is on replies from people. Like Chris is talking about quantitative, the number of people that's replied, as against qualitative, that's the word I was looking for, responses, where people actually put their feelings down and actually say what has been happening and the benefits. Now, a person signing a petition might not put those responses, right, but other people have. So I'm just wondering what the county weighting would be when they come to make a decision on people's feelings, attitudes, etc., rather than a tick box, or, like Chris has said, not bothering to respond at all.
I mean, if it reassures, we have our analysts now looking at both the quantitative and the qualitative aspect. So we're looking at both elements seriously, because often the rich picture that you get of people's experiences and so forth don't come through the numbers, they come through the comments. So we're giving both equal weighting.
From your model, therefore, would we be able to be told from your analysts what modelling they're using, or what percentages towards quantitative or qualitative? Would you be able to, in an open society, would you be able to tell us how they're going to model the consultation responses and come to a decision?
Within the report that we present to Cabinet, there will be, and given that there's 2,000 plus responses, we can't attach those as an appendix because it would run into hundreds and hundreds of pages. So we will be summarising both, the analysis of the quantitative and also the qualitative, and explaining our rationale and how that has fed into the final proposal. So there will be a link between what is being proposed and what has come through the consultation process.
Do you think there might be a challenge from the judicial review? Because it says here under the 2006 Childcare Act, Warwickshire County Council must ensure the sufficient provision of children's centres in its area to meet the support needs of all local parents and carers, prospective parents and young children. Do you think that by saving money, call it what you want, if the facilities are not going to be there in the future, do you think you might be able to judicial review as against breaking the 2006 Childcare Act?
Well, it's certainly not my intention to provoke a judicial review. There's two things there. One is people have read the Act and equated facilities and services with buildings, and what we've done through analysis of other areas, many other areas who've gone through this process 3 or 4 years ago, is that certainly the model that we're proposing through hub and spokes is that yes, there may be some instances where centres are no longer existing. However, we are exploring the potential for alternative provisions, so services being delivered, but perhaps through other buildings, and making far more efficient use of our resources as we currently have.
That would be in an ideal world. However, if those additional resources, etc., are not forthcoming, then you are not fulfilling the 2006 Act.
That's not our intention. That is
I know it's not your intention, but if
it's
a consequence, it could be a consequence.
It's not the intention, and it's certainly why within the model we propose hub and spokes. So the aspiration is that within areas we will identify sites from which we can potentially develop outreach services, and that would satisfy the provisions within the Act.
Finally, Chair, would you agree with me that these hubs already exist, that children's centres have been acting as hubs for the last 3 years after the last reorganisation through Bernardo's, who took over the running the 6 centres in Nuneaton, and there's 5 or plus stopping 4. These places are already hubs.
I would say some of them are, not all of them. You know, we had 39 centres, a budget of 7.6 million 4 years ago. That was reduced down to 4.8 million. What we have found through the consultation and through dealings with centres is that some centres are operating as they should do, as hubs. Others are hardly open at all. And I think certainly one of the main thrusts within our proposals is, would it not be better to channel our limited resources on services rather than maintenance of buildings?
Chair, I'd like to know which places you class as hardly open.
Well, sorry?
Ladybrook may not be open every day, but the days that it is open, it provides a vital service.
But it's still, we're paying, in those instances, we're paying full-time premises costs for buildings that are open, only open 1 or 2 days a week. And we think there's a more efficient model that channels those limited resources in keeping as many of the frontline staff.
That's not what Bernardo's told me. They said that Ladybrook cost them very little, under a couple of thousand a year.
Well, you know, we also know that it's commercially sensitive information, so I'd rather not get into a discussion over finances.
They share the cost with the NHS as well. The NHS rent the building for 2 days a week, and they get 1,700 a year from that. So you're not being completely honest. When you say Ladybrook's costs a lot of money for a few days, actually the cost is shared.
No.
And it's open for the other days. The NHS uses it as well.
If I can just clarify, Ladybrook was actually mentioned by, I didn't actually mention Ladybrook at all. I was talking about some centres throughout the county that are not open as often as they should be, and that's a marked contrast from 5 years ago, when most of them were open, you know, 6 hours a day for 4 or 5 days a week.
But the reason that they're not open all that time is because their budgets were cut 4 years ago. It's this is just it's classic Tory strategy. You cut, you slash and slash and slash, and then you say it's not working, we'll have to close it. We see it with time and time again with services all over the place.
Just to follow on from a few things, will the consultation be done by the Workshire Observatory?
The analysis?
Yeah.
With the data analysts are from the observatory, yes.
Right. So it'll be produced in, they do a lot of these consultation responses, so if people wanted an example of how it's going to come out, we could look on the website and look at maybe another few responses that they put together for us as a comparison as the sort of thing to expect.
Yeah, yes.
And that would be an accurate way of sort of looking at that. Just a thing that was mentioned about volunteers, I'd just like to point out volunteers are not always unemployed. So it's not just necessarily people that are claiming benefits. I volunteer, but I am employed as well. So it does stretch across those things. It's just to clarify that it does stretch across the employed people as well. What do you call this? Petitions. Did you mean the number of petitions before a petition is actually accepted? Because I know at Nuneaton there's
The number of names on the petition.
That's it. We have a cut-off point, don't we? If it's under 3,000 names, it's not accepted, or it's something along those lines.
I think it's even less than that.
I don't think.
It's what?
I thought it was 11. It was either 11 or 18% that made it a viable consultation.
I think
Petition.
No, the petition.
I think it's something like 2,000.
It's 3,000.
Is it 3,000?
For it to go to council, but there are bits under that. So if it's over 500,
Yes,
it goes to
500,
OSP.
and
If it's
then-
under that, it goes to the officers.
So this is all going to council anyway. This will all go through, regardless of the number of names on a petition. It's all going to be.
The proposal has to go back to Cabinet for approval before we even get to the implementation stage. And part of that proposal will also capture the key themes that have come through the consultation.
Right.
The point, just to clarify.
Yeah.
The point I'm making is, say somebody's only sent, say, 20 odd names in as a petition, and they're just going to chuck that out. Or are they going to take all the names in from, say, Nuneaton, Bedworth, Bulbington, whatever? Are they going to take all them names in together as a petition? Or have you got to get stocking for sports and social point first?
Right.
And that's what needs to be sorted out, because
Yeah.
kind of town centre versus, you know, what.
Well, thank you. If there's any other comments or anybody want to finish, don't take too long with that then.
It's unfair to bring the politics into it because you're not a politician, you're representing as an officer, so it's not really fair to start doing that. We can do that back in the chamber. But the budget that this was set out on was actually seconded by June Tandy and you agreed to it.
No, I'm sorry,
No.
but you've just lectured me about not bringing politics in, and you've done just that.
In response.
And it's a lie. And I want it recorded that it's a lie.
I will send you a copy of the document, if you like, the minutes from the meeting. I've got it here in front of me. Would you like me to email it to you?
I'm going to take this further because I am sick of this Tory lie being repeated again and again and again.
I'll copy you in on the email.
Don't bother. I'll sort it out myself.
I've said enough, thank you.
It's bringing politics into it. You say
Yeah,
one
don't
thing.
lecture me and then do it yourself.
Anyway, I'd like to make a recommendation, Chair.
Please do.
That this OOP has grave concerns in reference to the closure of children's centres in Nuneaton and Bedworth and the effect on the children and families.
Seconded.
You've got that, or didn't I write it down? Would you read it? Neil, put it down again so we've got it down.
Okay, that this OSP has grave concerns in reference to the closure of children's centres in Nuneaton and Bedworth and the effect on children and families.
Is that seconded?
Seconded.
It is seconded. Is there an amendment? All in favour of that being placed in front of, please show. Oh, I've got to count them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Those against? Oh, some of you can't vote, can you? And
I could
abstain?
vote, and Chair, I can't support something that prejudges the outcome of a consultation.
Yeah, I'm pretty much
I think the time for that motion is when the consultation's been done and the recommendation's been put forward. You know,
Grave concerns is a grave concern. It's an opinion of this committee.
Anyway, it's been carried through now. On that, will be placed in the minutes too. Any further comments, please? Okay, thank you very much both for that and answering the questions and coming. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Yeah,
I end up being second.
Okay, John, no
Okay.
problem.
My apologies.
Right, we're now on the latter one, we're on it. Yeah. You got it in there? Integrated performance report. Come on, we haven't finished the meeting. It's, Rob or... Who's going to start them? Is that fire? Go on then.
Thank you, Chair. The performance report that you've got in front of you, which starts on page 30, is the usual three-part report, which includes the integrated performance report, the risk register, and the strategic performance report. We only, as you know, do the items that have failed to meet their targets, or the trend is down, or whatever reds I like to call. So we have Rob Watson here to explain the reason for the non-smiley face with regard to removal of private sector property hazards. We've got Sue Traherne here who's going to talk to us or explain to us about the reduction in rent collection, and Dermot Faines here who is just going to very briefly cover the community centre and leisure centre attendances. If anybody's got any questions other than those three items, if you let me have them, then I will take them away and send you the answers. So I'm happy to move on from there, Chair. So the first.
So what we're doing now, going on to the first unhappy face.
Yeah, which is on page 36.
Oh yes, look at that. Community centre attendance.
Okay, community centres manager has given me this information for the community centres of Stockingford and Kersley. What I've been advised is it's due to the turnaround of groups leaving and starting. At Stockingford, 6 new groups have started. However, the decline is due to one main group leaving. The group had 252 members stroke attendance, but because the group grew, the centre wasn't big enough for them, so they left. That's really it's a downfall of their own success, really. So that's Stockingford. Kersley, 3 groups left, which equated to 90 members per month. One dance group were away for 10 sessions due to various holidays in April. They have 360 people. A few days were lost due to travellers on the site of Kersley. And just a side note to that, I've been advised barriers have been fitted today to help prevent further incursions. And the manager is confident that next time these numbers should exceed all the targets, if not certainly meet them. For the leisure centres, Pingles, I'll go by centre. So Pingles, for 3 months, April to June, the attendance was roughly 150,000. That's the last year. And this year, that decreased by roughly 5,000. And some reasons for this are attributed to the possibility of late Easter holidays, issues regarding cleanliness, but the main issue, or one of the main issues, is regarding maintenance of the centre. Swimming has also declined, which is in these figures, and that's a national decline. Sport England have confirmed the swimming around the country has decreased. And what Pingles are doing to rectify these loss of slight loss of numbers is they're addressing the maintenance issues, which there are quite a few maintenance issues, which often prevent certain facilities being used. For example, the pool might close for half a day due to the pool pump issues. But again, over time, those things build up. The list of maintenance issues I've seen, the centre manager is addressing them now, and there's a new manager at centre, and she's addressing these issues. One of the things that we can sort of help with, because the way the contract works is the maintenance is jointly shared. So some maintenance they have to do, the contractor, some we do, and some is shared. But in order for us to have a better insight into the maintenance, we are trying to get access to their maintenance system. There's a bit of a logistical issue there, but we're trying to get access to their maintenance schedule, so we can look at the preemptive measures when things come up, what we might be able to do to stop or limit disruption to certain facilities at that site. At Bedworth, the main issue, which is hampering the stats there, which have decreased by roughly 3,000, is the car park. That's the main feedback I'm getting from the public. And the feedback they're getting is the lack of car park spaces there. And both Pingles and Bedworth, what they do is with their classes, they rotate and offer new classes. So sometimes people may not like those classes and might wait until the next rota of classes. So they have been changing a lot of classes to look at trends around the country and see what people might want to do. And I think some people don't like those sort of some classes, so those numbers have dropped. At Eton and Jubilee, what I've been told is there's been a staff turnover, so there's been lots of coaches for certain activities, such as archery, but they are looking at talking to new coaches and offering new activities such as trampolining. Group exercise again has dropped at Eton and Jubilee, but the managers are negotiating with new coordinators to arrange some new classes. Recording of statistics sometimes is not comprehensive in terms of at Eton and Jubilee and certain part of Bedworth, they've got pitches to play on. When there's a group booking, what may happen is one person may go in the centre and have their card swiped. That's one statistic. There might be 20 people playing, not 20 or 30 people playing. So you're not counting those figures. So what the manager is looking at doing is just giving each of those people who partake in a sporting event on the fields, on the pitches, is to give them a card as well. So you get a better accuracy of statistical recordings there. With other things that they're trying to do and they're still doing, and I know we're going to cover this in the next OSP, is community engagement and take-up of passport for leisure, which I know I've heard, I've seen the statistics that it's going quite well, the actual uptake of it, and also trying to encourage key stage 2 swimming in schools. So what they're doing, they've been going out giving talks on water safety and also trying to encourage those schools to partake in swimming. There are some obstacles to that, but I will have a list of all the schools. Because this programme was being done over summer, so I should have a list by the next OSP of what schools are partaking and who aren't and why. And also they're looking at in-house training and development of staff as well to give staff better training.
Thank you, Chair.
There's the second one, and there's the third one.
A couple of questions. So on page 36, the large group that outgrew the stocking forward, it's a good news story. You know, victim of their own success, as you say. Which group was that outgrew it, and where did they go?
I don't know where they went, but the group was Embody Dance.
Oh right, okay, but we don't know where they gone.
With 252 people per month.
The other point on that page is Kersley, and it being out of action, you know, damage to the numbers because of the travellers being there. But you said the barriers have been fitted. That's really good news. I mean, that's such a good use of Section 106 playing open space, doing the target hardening. It's something that, you know, has been, I push for, and others I know cross-party have for a long time, and it's happening now, and the more that happens, the better. On page 37, I hear what you say about E-Town and, you know, archery. They've had a coach leave and everything, and they're hoping to do trampolining instead, but that's nearly a 20% drop in attendances. And actually, there's got to be a correlation there, because the satisfaction has dropped markedly as well, by about 10%, from 94 to 85. So, you know, the satisfaction's down and the attendance are down. There's got to be a link there. It's got to be more than just that archery coach. So I think, you know, we'd like to know a little bit more on what's happening there, given that the council have been putting money aside for years in the leisure and recreation budget to renew the 3G pitch there. And they did that, and it's, you know, it's been used by all sorts of clubs that didn't use it before, and that was a success story. It's been a couple of 3 years now. You know, actually, is there some problem with that hockey or whatever can't use it anymore because the markings have faded? I think we need to understand a bit more there. The other thing that you said, which is both good and very worrying at the same time, is about the way that statistics will be captured. So the centre manager there, instead of just traditionally swiping the one passport to leisure for the 20 people that turn up for the football, for the five-a-side or whatever the 4 teams are, is now going to count each one of them. Yeah, we want better statistics, but we've got to be comparing like with like. If that all of a sudden spikes up, but actually less teams went there, it's just instead of counting the captain each time, we've counted all the members, it gives a false impression. So when that data is captured next time, we need a note on Jubilee, E-Town, whatever, if the methodology for capturing the attendance figures has changed. Otherwise, it will just look misleading. I think we would like every centre to capture the actual number of people that go through there, and if it's booked for a five-a-side team, asking someone booking how many people are you due to get turn up realistically, and actually the manager going out there and having a look just to verify it, so we've got, you know, data integrity there, because I think that's quite important. But as I say, I think we'd all like to hear back on the big drop there, the 20% drop in attendance and the corresponding drop in satisfaction with E-Town. Jubilee, again, I can understand, you know, traveller incursions in there in the past have caused that to be out of action for a while, so, you know, but that's a much smaller drop. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I'm going to be area specific, i.e. Bedworth, I'm sorry. One of the things that worries me is the entrance as you go in to the Bedworth Leisure Centre off of the main Coventry Road. There's actually advertisement banner that's slipping apart. It looks disgusting, it's dirty, it's unwelcoming. You know, it's not encouraging people to actually go into Bedworth Leisure Centre, because if, as you're on the main road in Bedworth and you see this manky sign, you just don't want to go in there. And I mean, and the attendance, and one of the things that comes back quite regular are the showers. They are disgusting. There's a lot of complaints that they're dirty, they need cleaning, they need upgrading. It has come to this committee, again I'm going back that I've sat in here many years, and it comes back every time about the showers at Bedworth. And still we're being told it's hygiene and complaints. And, you know, surely these should have been addressed by now. We've had new contractors since, you know, this all started, but we're still getting the same sort of feedback that places, you know, if you go onto Coventry Road and look at the entrance to go into Bedworth Leisure Centre, you will not go in there because it looks bad.
Well, endorse, I'm not going to mention it, we know at least 2 Bedworth councillors whose family used them and stopped using the children, because it has a reputation. The baths and the toilets and the showers are terrible, and they've done one end here on the other side is not good. And I mean, this committee has heard this well and truly before, but some time we don't seem to get any better. So,
sorry, I'm just going backwards. The company are trying to secure funding to revamp that whole area, but they keep failing at that. they're trying to get funding, they keep applying for funding. So they are aware that certain areas do need upgrading. I do regular visits on different times of the day. Some days, times it will show you signs of use because so many people using it. Sometimes they're clean because not many people are there. The actual feedback, I'm getting less actual hygiene complaints now from my monthly feedbacks from the public. So, but I do take on board what you say. There are certain areas of part of that do need upgrading, and they know that. But it's again trying to secure that funding for it.
How much does it cost for a new banner out the front? Because that is falling apart.
Again, I think they'd have to prioritise again the budgets and the cost, because there are certain repairs. I mean, last year, one of the things that contributed...
Well, take it down then.
Yeah.
What you've got up there, bloody take it down, because it looks awful. Simple.
Again, that would be a decision for hiring
Well,
of bosses. But
some reason.
with the bus hitting Bedworth this year as well, the repairs went into April as well. So there's certain things to get
Oh, yeah, the
out.
bus
So
went
we
through
have to
the
look at that as well. So we have to fund that. So that's the showers. Just going back to you, Councillor Trowens, you're saying the Bedworth attendance has dropped by 20%?
No, I said E-Town specifically, so if you look...
Oh, right, yeah.
It
is mainly, that is going, so going back, it is what the centre manager said, and it's a new centre manager. All three centres got new managers. There's one left at Pingles, and then they all sidestepped, and there's a new one at E-Town. But that's mainly classes that he's saying, and this is what he's looking at to increase more of.
But the satisfaction, I mean, if it was a drop and it's, operational reasons, that's one thing, but there's a corresponding sharp drop in customer satisfaction at E-Town. So what classes they are still doing, people are a lot less happy with than they were before. So that's a real issue. I think that's something we need to understand more about what's happening at E-Town. And if that's as a result of Barbeacon not living up to their contractual obligations, we definitely need to know about that and sort that out.
Also, what you can bear in mind is on this customer satisfaction, you may have 100 people at Pingles giving feedback, but at E-Town you might have, say, 5. We've had this before previously. I'm not saying it's on this occasion, where E-Town had, their percentage was 75, but I found out it was only 4 people that gave comments, so one person was dissatisfied.
With that caveat, I still think, there's a lot of... there's a backstory there.
Yeah, certainly that's what I do look at to address, to increase satisfaction as well as obviously the attendance.
Any further, Chris?
Sorry, Tony.
I took a breath then.
On the Stocky Ford Community Centre, have you got any plans to make any alterations to that? Because I know that the changing rooms are quite large up there. I know that you have to travel because of football pitches and that. But if that is taking a lot of space up, could we not reduce the size of the changing rooms in any way? Because if groups are leaving there because it's not big enough, and we could reduce the size of the changing rooms, because it does take up about 50% of that building really. I'm just wondering if there's anything been looked at that, because I know there was talk about it once. But if not, you don't have to answer me now, it's not a problem. And the other thing is, you said that swimming's on the decline.
Nationally.
Well, I'm going to say, because I work on another group within the council, and Pingles is at capacity, and Bedworth is something about 70%. So that just shocked me a little bit.
The holiday period as well, like Easter was a bit later this year, and June also comes into the summer period. I know children are off school, but that sort of period, and you're also looking at now as well, you'll find the figures will be slightly less because of some holidays. So that is that. Just going back to Stocking Ford, I can't answer questions on the centres at Stocking Ford Kersley, because that's the manager's remit, the centre manager remit, but I can take that question back to her and I can feed back.
Yeah, just if there's any plans
of
improving the central space.
Ingrid.
Thank you, Chair. Pure Gym will be opening soon in Rope Walk. Has there been any consideration as to the impact that will have at the Pingles?
on brief discussions I've had there about this is that I think, like anything, there will be honeymoon period. I think the gym at Pingles will take a hit initially because Pure Gym, I do understand, are offering certain incentives to join at the beginning. So I think it's about 4 or 5 months of half the rate and then it increases. So yes, we do understand there will be at the beginning probably a slight drop. The same thing happened when Empire a couple of years ago started going, but Pingles managed, in fact Pingles last year increased their figures hugely compared to the year before. So that Empire didn't necessarily affect them that much. So looking at it as a model compared to Pure Gym. But again, it's totally different because Pure Gym's in the centre of the town. So I think there's a slight anticipation of a period at the beginning, but I think it will tail off once people start paying the increased rate at Pure Gym. And remember, Pure Gym only offer gym facilities. They don't offer classes and the other things that the centres here at Pingles and Bedworth offer. So yes, I understand that we do think there will be a slight drop, but I think it will tail up towards the end.
I think Pure Gym also goes for shift workers, don't they? Aims for shift work.
I think it's 24-hour gym, so
yours.
Yeah, Bedworth. Couldn't agree with you
Wonderful
more.
place.
Yeah, we take our kids, well, my mother-in-law does a lot of the time, but I go on a Saturday lunchtime with them, and they both have swimming lessons, they both love it, but those changing rooms are vile. And I will happily come in with a bottle of bleach R12 and scrub the place from top to bottom because the toilets in the changing rooms absolutely stink. And it's not something that happens just in a short period of time. That is not being cleaned properly over a long period of time. I mean, I was retching the other day when I was stood at the side. You have to stand in the toilet cubicle in order to stand at the side of the showers to wash the kids off. And I was showering my little girl and washing her hair, and I was retching because it just smelled like pee. And that's not an instant thing. I've got a real issue with bleaching my bathroom, and I just want to take a bottle of bleach in there and just scrub the place. And I'll happily volunteer to do that on my own time at my own cost because I just don't like standing there, and the kids are standing in it, and it's just not nice.
I mean, the cleaning rotas I am looking at, and they are looking to review them because I didn't pick up on this the previous quarter, and I did recommend that they get more clean, certainly the busy times.
I don't necessarily think it's more cleaning, I think it's better cleaning.
Yeah.
I don't think it's volume, I think it's actually the quality of the cleaning that's being done, because like I said, that stench doesn't come from somebody missing the toilet a couple of times. That's built up over a while, and it's right in the nooks and crannies. Just bleach it, just bleach the lot of them.
I mean, I know
the
Pingles, I know, got this new bleach and it's very good. It's managed to get stains that I've seen in the past few years that couldn't get out.
Right.
They've managed to get really tiles, like grey tiles, white. I think just took the layer off the tiles, it's that strong. But things like deep chemical cleanings, they can only do it at certain times when there's not obviously people around.
Yeah.
So they are trying to look at the impact it might have on loss of business. So they're trying to look at times when it's really quiet to get that in.
I do understand that, but if it's putting people off overall, then you're going to lose money either way. So you're robbing Pete to pay Paul.
Yeah. And what I do say to the public is centres as well, encourage feedback. The more evidence I've got of people coming to me with this feedback, we can then take that to an active and say, look, this amount of percentage of people are saying this. But I will take it for example. Like I said, the new manager there.
On another positive, the staff are lovely. And the cafe's brilliant.
Yes, the cafe is
I've got two speakers there waiting. But you're waiting for more people. I mean, this has been a going thing for a long time in Bedworth, and they still ain't done it after all this time. Now, you can't get more. We're a council body come to scrutiny to tell you that Bedworth baths are filthy, dirty, and want something doing about it. Now, if we have to move a property on here to go to Cabinet to get something done, the contractors, then we will do it. I mean, because what you're saying is, I'm waiting for point. You can't have more. We're elected body here by the authority, and we recommend, I've got two speakers, I'll come back to you. Neil, and then your good self.
I was just going to say I'll support that if you want to put that forward as a motion.
We'll work somebody put some brain together, put a motion together. Neil?
Yeah, I was just going to say the same thing. I mean, here we are pointing out to a council employee who's dealing with the contract, you know, that we've got out there, and we're saying this is an issue. Now, you know, I want this, we want it taken seriously, whereby this will be taken back to the company and something done about it.
Oh, no, and it is, it's taken seriously. I do go to them, you know, I do check the places out, and I do take the centre manager with me when I'm walking around. And if I see things, I point things out to them, you know. And if this is the case, that, you know, if this is nothing, certainly that's fine. I can go back and say, you know, as OSP meeting. No, I'll certainly give the feedback.
Yeah. The other thing is, Chair, passport to leisure. Do we have any data, up-to-date data on who's actually using it from a passport to leisure point of view? Is anything being recorded? You know, are we still reaching people that could take advantage of passport to leisure?
Data is recorded. There's two sets of data. One data is actual usage, so people using passport to leisure. The other one is sign-ups. Okay. That data I haven't got on me now, but I think that's down for the next meeting. Is that surely yes? So
You sent me some data through the other day.
for Councillor Shepherd, yeah.
And I perhaps didn't send it to everybody.
That's
Yeah, I think that was for health.
It's community engagement. It's what they're doing in the community, and part of that
I
will
can
be
share that
passport
with
to
you.
leisure.
Neil, that's
Thank
not
you
a
very
problem.
much.
And anybody, does
Yeah.
everybody want to see the bit of
Yeah.
information I've got on?
Well, please do
Chair.
that, sign-ups for
Passport to leisure. Yeah.
especially if it's in deprived areas, as
I've
I've been
signed
asking
up.
for years.
I use
Well,
it several times a week.
Send it to you.
Deprived areas.
No, not really.
Trap the time.
Running down the information.
That's
Yeah.
it, Chair. That's it, yeah.
Yes, sorry, I was just going to say about the deep chemical clean. Well, if you use something like baby steriliser, you don't have to wait for it to build up and stink so bad you've got to put a bleach on or whatever. You could do it frequently with a, you know, something that's safer to use. You could go in, somebody could go in once every 30 minutes or whatever and just have a quick scrub around.
I'm no expert on chemicals, so I have to go on what the experts say on the chemicals. I'm sure it is, but I couldn't comment on what chemicals.
If you make them aware of Claire's threat, I'm sure it'll get done very quickly.
Yeah, I will be bringing about the bleach
I'll
next
let them
time,
know
honestly.
that,
I'm fastidious with it. I'll put it dirty. The toilets will not good.
Perhaps it would be a good idea, Chair, if you came back with their rota and also how they do it. You know, what is their procedure? Not just how often, but what is their procedure of cleaning?
I've seen their rotas and what they do. It's a huge amount of information. I'm quite willing to bring it down, but there will be quite a
They're
lot.
obviously not doing it though, are they?
Can we put that down?
They might have a massive list saying we do this
Require,
and that, but they're not doing
Anyway.
it.
require the Bedworth facility hygiene to be looked by the new company to increase. I'm trying to think of words you're together, that we require a report back from the company representative of this body of the how and what they have done to increase and improve the hygiene of the Bedworth baths. You've all got brains, come on, use some of your brains and help me put something together so we can vote on it, because then it will go, even picks up the cabinet, and then they would have to pick on that we are concerned of the cleanliness. And there's one, I know there's at least two on there, I've been complaining about the hygiene of Bedworth, so.
Maybe you ought to put on, Chair, that it's been going on a really long time.
The
For
scrutiny
years.
of being report that the hygiene now, at least, the last 18 months has not been at the high standard that this this council require, and we want the company to improve the hygiene of the Bedworth bath immediately, and a report from our representative to us through our officer, and we're notified what they have done to increase the hygiene, and further inspections by this county should be counted out by our representative, something like that.
Shelley, can you pick that up off the video and we'll just vote and agree that now?
Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
just gonna
I'll put it forward to you. We wanted a vote and so
Yeah.
it's official.
Second that, Chair.
So that,
Just to say, Chair, that we are expecting the contractor to come to the November meeting of this panel. So that is something that we could include for them to
that
report
we
on
want
when
it
they
fully, yes,
Very timely.
fully
That would be great.
report on that. But I mean, we've got a representative and we want them to go in to inspect, to make sure
And they're
how it is clean. Well, whoever needs, because he's our representative,
Yeah.
you've got to go through
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
I mean, you will have yourself there as well and you'll be at the meeting ready to say, well, you haven't done it.
Well, you
And then
have.
we can recommend to Cabinet that the contract is being broken through the hygiene and action by Cabinet should be taken to remedy that. And we'll allow the Cabinet to carry out what is necessary to get the standards that we require. And that's what we're looking at. So all in favour of pushing that forward?
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Okay, now that's from the official body of this committee and council. Okay, thank you very much. Is there anything else anybody want to make? We can move on to the next item. Yes.
Sorry, just, you'll notice above what Dermot's just been talking about, the community centre finance is also only got a little bit of a funny face. And I just wanted to advise, Brent has sent me through an email, which I will send out to everybody tomorrow, but he says that the community recreation budget of 1,339,000 pays for the following key items, because this was information that was requested at the last meeting. So he's saying that it is for the operation of our sports and leisure centre, all the ones that Dermot's just mentioned by everyone active. It's the capital charges, including the depreciation on those centres. There are some aspects of repair, maintenance and servicing for the centres that NDBC pays for. The CCT coverage of the car parks at those centres and the NDBC employee costs for contract monitoring and management, so presumably your post there, along with some others. So that's in response to a question that was raised at the last meeting.
And that will come through
And
to
I
you.
will I'll forward that on to everybody.
Okay, there you'll get that too, so you've got that out first hand. Okay, thank you. Thanks. You don't have to leave, you just, I mean, you keep us here, I want to leave what you're doing.
I'm right now, late.
Okay, thank you anyway, yeah, cheers, whatever. What we are, which are the, oh, that's got small in face. Oh, look at this one, removal of private sector property owners. Page 39. That's a dim, dismal one, isn't it?
Yes.
Who's operating that one?
That's
Oh,
what's
that's yours.
Thank you. I'd just like to draw attention, this is about private sector property, so particularly the complaints arise from members of the public about landlord complaints or road landlords. The actual category 1 hazards are removed by the officers going out and doing the inspection, so it's complaint led, and we've seen a 20% drop in actual complaints coming from members of the public about their private rented property. It would be naive to say that there's been an improvement in the standards of private rented properties within the Nuneaton Bedworth, it's a general improvement, but it wouldn't really account for that sort of level of drop. But what the officers are seeing is category 2 hazards, which are less serious hazards, being identified, and they wouldn't be picked up on this report. So we're not finding as many category 1 hazards, but there's been an increase in the number of category 2 hazards as a result of the inspections. And we've got a plan in place to delivering homeowner grants, which should increase these figures dramatically, which should take place over the next 3 months. That's tending to come in Warwickshire-wide, so we should see a big increase in those figures from that. And also we're doing a Warwickshire-wide statement of intent with regards to energy efficiency, which we're hoping will draw in the energy utility companies to invest in Warwickshire in generally, which will transfer down into investment in Nuneaton Bedworth to reduce those figures as well.
Yeah, Chair, I mean, other than what was just referred to, the only thing in this section of the report that really leaps out, there's only two things, and that is the private sector dwellings returning to occupation. Smiley face there next to the outturn, because we've spent less, saved 20 grand. That's a really bad news item. That should be a frowny face, because I'm afraid, look at the lost opportunity there. That's because there's 2 vacancies in the department, and as a result, you can see that, you know, last year they only returned 3 and a target of 18, and this quarter for this year they've only returned 8 dwellings. So although we're saving 20,000 on salary costs, we're losing a lot of opportunity there, it appears from this graph, in terms of not hitting our targets for that. So it would be really good to know, are those 2 posts about to be filled, and we've got people for them?
I offered the empty property officer post today, so there should be somebody in post hopefully within the next 4 weeks for that. I mean, the figure of 3 is obviously it's an improvement on last year. This is about the Q1 figures. That isn't for the obviously for the entire year.
No.
So
good, but
yeah.
It's still well below target, and I'm really pleased that you've hired somebody.
Yeah, well, the target actually for this year is 12. Previously it had been 18, but it's been reduced now to 12, so we're at 8 already. We've got a significant amount of time to get the extra 4. Whilst you've raised the subject, it was raised at this panel on my last attendance about Chatsworth Street flats, which is essentially a block of flats with 10 properties in it. I spoke to the owner yesterday, and it's possible that we might be able to renovate the entire block to get 10 properties back in one go. We're just negotiating with them about finances, because I prefer not to give them a full amount for considering it's one property. So that's a good news story.
Indeed, very much. The only other point on there is rent collection, and it looks worse on the graph because of the scale on the graph than perhaps it really is. It's not a good trend. Can you just comment on that?
I think.
No, we're
Oh, sorry, I jumped ahead.
We ain't gone. We're still moving off the stud face or private.
Am I keen to get
No, you don't. No, I know you want to get out, and I do, but below the way, take your time to read you turn the page. Right. The next one obviously is rent collection. And you've been sitting here all day and night, so you can give us a wonderful report.
Okay, as it does show, rent collection, it isn't either at measure that we set, and it's also reduced when compared to last year. There are a number of factors around that. Firstly, I would say that obviously that does mean that we are collecting 96.22% of the rent that's outstanding. Unfortunately, the trend is that we have more people who are in arrears, and we also are finding that some of those people have perhaps more complex situations within their family environment. So there's a need for perhaps a multi-agency involvement with a particular family. What I would say is that whilst our focus in this particular instance is to collect rent, we do balance that with we are trying to keep people sustained in their tenancies, and in order to do that we are trying to work with people in order to support them and to enable them to be in a position that with the right support that puts them into a place that they can then sustain their tenancy and pay their rent as regularly as they should. And that isn't an overnight thing with an awful lot of people. We are trying to work in a number of different areas. The contributing factors that I would probably draw your attention to, which we know are having an impact, are obviously we still have a spare room subsidy, so that does impact some of our tenants, along with the benefit cap affecting. So the numbers on those, for example, on these figures here, is we have got 477 of our tenants affected by the spare room subsidy, and we do have 42 of our tenants affected by the benefit cap at the current time. You will be well aware that universal credit is obviously a change that's coming forward as well. And whilst we have a relatively small number of people in receipt of universal credit at the moment because of the rollout, one of the things that I wanted, I suppose, to point out to you is that even though we have a relatively small number at the moment. 7.4% of those people are already in arrears of over 2 months. And we do expect that number to obviously increase as more people transfer over to universal credit or are obviously claiming for the first time and universal credit is missing payment. Some of the things that we're trying to do, obviously, in order to, I suppose, justify what I've just said, that we are trying to support families, is we do have support officers within our benefits section. We previously did only have one. We have now doubled that. We've taken on another person, and that person started at the end of July. So we're looking at where we can try and intervene at the earliest possible point, but also where we can have links with third-party sectors, because we can't support everybody in all of the areas that they need, but where we are bringing together. And what I would like to point out as well is we're not just looking at somebody's rent in isolation. We are looking at the holistic debt situation that's owed to the authority, in order that on Monday we're not writing to you or contacting you and saying you owe rent. On Tuesday we're contacting you and saying you owe council tax. On Wednesday we're saying you have a housing benefit overpayment. At the end of the day, you have an amount of disposable income, and we are looking at that disposable income that you have and how we can actually pay a proportion of your debts, but ultimately how we can obviously keep a roof over your head. I'm not saying that we don't have some people who don't fall into the category of they will not pay their rent, and obviously with any debt that will always be the case. In those particular instances we are continuing through to eviction where we need to. But I think what I would like to really reiterate to you is, although those figures aren't where we would like them as an authority because of the amount of money that's going into the HRA account, that we do have to balance that with that we are trying to sustain people's tenancies, and we are trying to not make people homeless, that then just puts us in another potential duty of care that we have as an authority, and that we go round in an ever-revolving merry-go-round. So whilst those figures are correct, hopefully that does give some context around perhaps some of the
Before we move to
contributing
universal
factors.
credits, how much are we arrears now? How much are we arrears are we now?
Unfortunately, that's another thing. We are having a new computer system that will provide us with a little bit more information than we have available at the moment. Because we can't get that actually out of our housing system, we're having to get that out of our housing benefit system at the moment. So that is another area for us that's difficult for us to quantify. I can quantify for you that 7.4%.
So we don't know how much arrears we're in now?
Not broken just down into that universal credit. I don't have that information available, I'm afraid. I'm very sorry.
When I was struggling finding out when we moved to universal credit,
I
that's
know,
what
we
I
are on
want to
full
know
rollout,
now, so,
obviously,
because
later
we ain't
this
going to
year.
get that after that comes in.
Yeah.
We know we've got some arrears, and it's how much arrears we've got.
Yeah, and
I mean, okay, 960 ain't bad, I'm going up,
Yeah.
but that's,
And we do recognise that obviously that is the case, and we are in the process of looking at the moment now that we've managed to extract some data out of our housing benefit system.
you've got the figures there surely in the office.
We've got 7.4%
Well,
in arrears.
whatever you've got, or
obviously
at the
provide you
nearest
some
point
more.
you've got to, near enough to the accuracy, can you please let
Of course.
Shirley know, please, so the members of this committee can know exactly where we are, God, before we move into you. Yes, Councillor.
Yeah, if I may ask, Chair, 7.4% arrears, is that total cash amount or is that number of tenancies in arrears?
That's number of tenants who are in receipt of universal credit.
Oh, right, okay.
Yeah.
Now, the cash collection figures there for rent collection, is this a proper receipt versus due in terms of, is it a measurement of the amount received each month against the rents due each month, or is it the total cash received in terms of rent payments against the rents that were due? In other words, is some of that money people paying arrears off on where they're catching up with their rent arrears, or has that been stripped out?
No, it is the
Total
total amount.
cash.
The total amount that is owing in respect of unpaid rent, and that works on a cumulative basis. So to sort of put it into some context, the net weekly rent debit is roughly £487,000 a week.
Okay.
Of that, at the moment, as at this week, which isn't the end of July, but I thought this week's figures would be more useful to you, 59.6% of our tenants are in receipt of some form of housing benefit.
Yeah.
Now, that means that at the moment, £265,000 of that £487,000 a week is paid in a housing benefit payment to us. This is why when we go over to Universal Credit, and that money is obviously paid directly to the customer, and it is their responsibility to pass that over to us. As the larger number of people transfer onto Universal Credit, we do realise and we do expect that our rent arrears will increase as a result, and that is a national trend. That is not just something within the local authority. But we are working with looking at how obviously we can trying and, as I say, get that support in there at the earliest possible point and make people realise that part of that payment they're receiving is actually to pay part of their rent, which previously they may have, you know, had a claim the housing benefit was paid for them, and there is a genuine miscommunication, misunderstanding, whatever you would like to call it. I suppose it's just as engaging at that earliest opportunity, because once people are in arrears, it's a very, very difficult situation when somebody's on a limited income to say to them, you now have X amount of pounds to pay. There comes a tipping point where you could almost ask them for any amount, because that is unachievable in their eyes. And we do recognise all of that. And all I can assure you is we are trying to work with people.
Just two final points. One is I'm very pleased to hear that you've hired another support officer, because clearly educating these people as they on the drip transfer over to Universal Credit, explaining actually you've got to budget properly, we can help you with that, these agencies can do that, signposting where they can get this assistance from, so they can be a bit more self-reliant. I think that was a really smart move to do at this stage, and that looks good, because the overall feeling that I have is, you know, yes, there's some forbearance by the council, and I'm bloody glad there is, because it's so much easier to work with people and keep them in a property rather than to try and deal with homelessness. That's way more difficult, more expensive, and the outcomes for the people involved are much worse. So, you know, I'm sure there's some councillors around who would look at that and go, no, we need to be getting every penny and throw them out. And no, I think forbearance is the financially smart, prudent, and morally the right thing to do. And I'm much more relaxed about those figures than maybe some would be.
Chris?
Yeah, I'll say again, as I've said quite a few times, I think we do a marvellous job, to be honest.
Thank you.
But I just don't think you tell enough people about it. And I realise for some people, they might be embarrassed to come in and get the information or whatever. But like you say, the housing element of the Universal Credit can be paid straight to the council. But not a lot of people might know that. So it's about the education side of it as well. So finding out, capturing the people who are on Universal Credit earlier would help. But we just don't get the message out there. We don't get the message out there that we're here to help and things like that. I just think we need to do more on getting the message out there, to be honest.
We are doing a financial inclusion launch on the 21st of September.
Oh, right.
And that's to look at where I work for a shared service for ourselves in North Warwickshire,
Right.
and that financial inclusion partnership is already in place at North Warwickshire. It's electronic, it's signposts, and if people are saying that they are having problems in a certain area, they have a referral to a third-party agency straight away. There's the food bank, there's lots of different things that we're finding that the message being portrayed in a certain way as well may make it that some people are embarrassed, some people find it difficult to ask for help as well. We recognise that. Everybody's in a different situation of why they are there. We are doing that launch on the 21st of September. And again, as an authority, we're looking at how we can potentially support people, not just with paying their rent arrears necessarily, but how they can change their lifestyle, how they can access perhaps the opportunities to be able to go into employment when they've been out of employment for a long period of time, but that they have that support there. It's an all-encompassing change not just he who shouts the loudest to receive the money. It's about giving people the opportunity. Not everybody will engage, Councillor Watkins, you know,
So
we will,
what
we'll
will we
always
do
find
to get that message out about that 21st then?
That's the official launch day where it's available for everybody to sort of, I suppose, come and find out what we're doing. And then Sally Roberts, who's our financial inclusion manager, she will actually be promoting that after that.
So will that be going in on our Facebook page and things like that?
Yeah, and my understanding is that certainly it's intended to, and I'm sure that they would be more than happy to see as many councillors as possible at that launch.
That's a good point.
Lynn, what do you want to say?
It's just, yeah, I mean, one of the things the resident partnership try to push is rent first. You've got a roof over your head, you can always manage. And one of the things the residents partnership do try to promote, we put that on our Facebook page, Councillor Watkins shares things like that as well. It's just very difficult sometimes, especially if they're younger tenants coming in and they're in their first year, and it's living with the house of mum and dad where you get your dinner put in front of you. You've all of a sudden got to supply your dinner. And my biggest fear and our biggest fear on the partnership has been the universal credit. It really, really is concerning for us, because when somebody turns around and gives you a £5 and you've either got to pay the rent with that or you've got to feed your kiddies, it's a very, very fine line. And I think that's where I agree with you, that there's got to be multi-use agencies to push people. But what I do think this council's excellent at is that they write to the people straight away. And then it's not just that one letter, then there's the knock on the door saying, can we talk, we need to move forward. And I think hold your head high on that, because I think you do a brilliant job for that. And I think this committee should realise that, it's not an easy job. I mean, it was great because the rent man used to knock your door and he used to see everything, and a lot of things got reported then. That doesn't happen now. But it's also for people to be educated in their bank balances, to know when direct debits are coming out, to make sure funding's there, because you can go down a sticky line if you haven't got the money in there to pay your rent. So hold your head high, you do a brilliant job.
Can I just point out that will be a non-smiley face, I think, for the rest of the year.
Yeah.
Any further comment?
Yes.
No?
Yeah.
Thank you, Joe, for your report. Thank you.
Shirley, can you make her an invitation?
Yeah.
Well, we were expecting Joe.
Yes.
I'd invited Joe and Kat told me she weren't coming, and as soon as coming in.
Soon as
Actually, the reason I said it is because I'm reading the paper instead of putting it out. If I hadn't looked at the paper, I'd have said it correctly, so I do apologise to you.
That's no problem.
It's just right, that's a turnover. Now we're on to the risk register. Have you looked through that, how the items are on there?
There are only two that's there.
There's only two, yes.
Unless anybody's got anything to say about anything else.
Yes, so no, so where do we go now, further down?
Then it's to
Page what? 60, 80, 60? Is that it?
81.
81?
That's it.
I think it's 80.
Oh, is it? Sorry, 61.
61, 81, 61. Anything on there?
No.
No, you're okay? Keep the page going. And then we're down to the Commentary of City Performance Report.
That just tells you about what you just looked at.
Yeah, what we just looked at, and then we've got the Freedom of Information requests.
Chair, I want a forward plan.
You want to have a...
Just to mention, Chair, the reason that this information here for the Freedom of Information and Complaints is on this, has been sent like this, is because part of the FOI and Complaints Review that Councillor Watkins chaired requested that the data be itemised and identified as by department. So that's why it's so many pages. But that will tell you who's doing what.
Oh, right, yeah.
Christine.
It's been very much improved, I tell you now. I went on it last night and reported a couple more problems. and it's much
The
easier.
new service went live on the 1st of September, I was advised today, so hopefully we
It is
will.
much better.
And then there's a forward plan on page 71.
And the 71 forward plan. Anyway, okay. Keep the faith. And then we're on
And
to.
finally, the work programme. This one.
Oh, that's taking the name at the top.
Um,
The last item is 74, page 74. What do you want to do about the work programme?
I haven't had any new items, Chair.
If you're there.
But I did realise that I hadn't updated this with the hard to let or difficult to let properties that Councillor Watkins put forward at the last meeting. So that is just an error, Chair, that I haven't amended that. So that will be on for next time.
Okay, thank you very much. Everybody okay with that?
Yeah.
Okay, got it.
SLM at the top there will be for November.
Yeah, okay, that'll be pushed on for November and that. Anyway, thanks for your long evening and working hard. Thank you very so much, and the commission coming out, all the people that visited us. Thank you, have a good journey home, and I declare the meeting closed. Thank you.
Next time.
What's the